Welcome to the Hawks Nest stream show. My name is Brandon Kane. I do appreciate you. You know I do, for tuning on in today as we move our way towards here just the end of the season here on Sunday with Super Bowl, but also with a twisting and a turning quickly on into the offseason. The NFL has really set the sport up in a strategic fashion so that there really is no offseason. There's always something that seems to be on the horizon as far as your team goes, even if you're not in year playing actual games. And with that said, we've got free agency coming almost just a month away. So while you might be going, wait, isn't that a couple months after the season? No, it's pretty immediate right after the end. So you want to be kind of paying attention really quickly on this one for how the team could potentially upgrade, because the good team certainly doesn't use free agency to lean on in order to build up the best team. You want to do that through the draft and development. You want to use free agency for supplementation, but at the same point in time, there is always still the hopefulness that you can find those pieces and parts that can get you, especially for Hawks team, potentially really looking to get over that hump next year. A couple of those extra guys to kind of vault you up over on the other side. You know what you're going to get. There's no waiting for development time. Yes, you may be having some variance as far as free agent performance goes with these guys, as far as, hey, now I got paid, I can shut it down, versus still staying hungry, still wanting it, still being at their peak performance. But we're going to go through today 20. Count them a 20. I've broken down. I've looked through the free agent. I've done all the hard work for you on this one. I've looked at the top 20 free agent targets for your Seattle Seahawks going into this offseason. I've tried to be very selective in this, where we're both going to have some options that are certainly going to be high-priced options, but also along the route of maybe where John's gone in the past, or the type of free agent that they maybe have looked towards in the past. We also have one little extra special extra as a 21st one that's a little bit of an outside-the-box option. But we're going to pile through these and just kind of go through these options as I see them and why I'm going to try to make my case for why I've got them in kind of the high priority. We're going to start from the top on this. I do want to begin with the one part that some people would want to enter into this free agency and say, so let's debunk the first thing that we're going to hear often from with people going into this free agency period. We have no money. We're broke. We can't spend anything. Over the cap told me that we were $20 million over the cap. Hell, $27 million over the cap. There's no possible way we can spend any money on the free agent market. We're too cash strapped. We just have to sit back here and just kind of hold it up. That's the way it is. All we can do is go bargain basement shopping. On the surface of this, I understand why this is the outlook and approach from a Seahawks fan in their first look of over the cap, because that's a pretty daunting number. You're at the bottom of the list. There's not many more teams other than the Browns and the Saints below you at this point. But it is all about cap flexibility. And just as a reminder, as I point out many different times on this show here in recent months, the Seattle Seahawks have a lot of levers, contractual levers that they can pull to be able to get their cap situation in a much better state, much more aligned to being kind of middle of the road than bottom of the barrel. And these are a couple of the names I'm posting up over my shoulder right here, from Rayshon Jenkins to Noah Fant, to George Fant, to Roy Robertson Harris, to Draymond Jones and Tyler Lockett, who will each have the most money that you would save by moving off from them. That's $62 million collectively just between these guys. That isn't even all of the potential moves you could make to free up cap space. We also are sitting on a point where 26-27, we've got as much cap space as anybody in the NFL. So there's an easy way to go short in the beginning stages of this and then have the contracts get better faster into the next year, 2 or 3. This is what a lot of teams do. And a lot of teams do this that are contending teams. So it's not outside the box to say that this team could go into free agency and could spend some money. I'm not saying going crazy. We know that's not John's way, but certainly he could make some sniper-like signings where he's just trying to target it on something really good, that's real specific, that's going to cost a little bit more outside of where he's been in recent history, because again, it does not only two things of filling a hole you may have on the team, but also then freeing you up in the draft to not have to do what? Reach for need. That's the place you always want to avoid. You don't want to be reaching for need. You want to get in the draft and go, look, we'll take a guard if that's the best guy up on our board, but if it's a defensive tackle, if it's an edge, and that's way above the guard we have on our board, we want to be able to select that guy and not go, well, if you miss out on this guy, what are you doing for the position? How are you going to address this otherwise on this? So let's get into it without further ado and drive into this list and see what you guys think. I did try to go, as I said, through these pretty thoroughly and looking through. I might have missed a one or two that you guys will have some good ideas on, no doubt about that, but I think I've captured pretty much where we'll be at on this. First up is the guy that is going to be on everybody's lips as far as Seahawks fans, and guess what? It's going to be on the end of everybody's lips in Minnesota, and everybody on the end of the lips in Chicago. It's going to be quite a few, and is even going to Kansas City going to let this guy go out the door? That's also remains to be seen, though he is due to be a free agent. It's going to be hard for them to just simply franchise him. It's not been the way that they've tended to lean in the past overall. And I'm speaking to Trey Smith. Kid came out of Tennessee a couple of years ago as a real pro-ready guard that maybe just didn't have a lot of that upper end, huge upside to him, but a guy that you kind of knew what you're going to get, and the floor was going to be very, very high. Also a leader in the locker room, good work ethic, a guy that's going to show a standard to the rest of the players. I had EJ Schneider from Bootleg Football over on the show about a month ago, and we were talking about building up the offensive line and the methods and approaches to do so. And I didn't even really bring up Trey. He just kind of brought it up on his own, in that Trey was a guy that he had met personally and had a chance to, sit down and talk with, for a good 15, 20 minutes. And he was just blown away by this guy. He seems to be all about ball. He seems to be that kind of leader you want in the locker room, especially on these offensive lines that we're going to have. That's maybe have some parts that young and developing. That's why you had to bring in Jason Peters last year to get a little bit more of that veteran presence in there to help out these young cats and get them guided along. I do think the cost is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood, if not more, of 4 years, $105 million. So that's pretty expensive for a right guard, no doubt about that. He is only 26. His PFF positional rank this past season was 4th in the NFL. So I'm not saying we just lean on the PFF wholly. We already know his reputation is really good throughout the league. This also matches up to what the analytics tell us about him. He would be a fit into this offense, already playing in a West Coast offense with the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's really hard not to see how this deal would be nothing but a home run if you were to even spend this kind of money. I feel like I would have more hesitancy in giving out the deal to Robert Hunt, who was the first $20 million a year guard last year, than I would to Trey Smith. I think Trey's a better player. And so this is one where if they make this one of their centerpiece signings, their only centerpiece signings like Leonard Williams, where look, we got one big stroke to swing, or we can make 4 small ones. You make your big stroke here, and now you can really lock into center and left guard and what you got to address, in the future on that and into the draft potentially, which is well stocked for those kind of positions. Not the worst of ways to go, especially with the depth that you still have. But Trey Smith, I don't think I have to sell this one to many of you. Probably just pretty much a no-brainer from all the way down the line from every Seahawks fan, as they can understand why this would make sense. It's only the cost, and even that, look, this is what we're going to have to do at this point if we want to actually get something that we know what we're getting, rather than, maybe down the road. I think we've done well. I think we've done enough maybes, maybe down the roads. I think we need to do more of, let's get some here and the now, especially, again, this move being made if you're really believing yourself to be a true blue contender. The Hawks wanted to double down, or if they just wanted to pivot over and make this their sort of secondary move, this is the other way that they could go with it. And that would be Drew Dahlman as my number 2 free agent target. Drew is a center out of Atlanta, part of a pretty good offensive line with Atlanta in recent years, a real leader on that. If you're stalking me, if you heard this with Trey Smith, a leader on that line, a guy that's going to guide and direct things really nicely. The offensive line calls reputedly come from the offensive line in this system with Kubiak. So having a center that's well accommodated to do that type of stuff, who you're going to get a good all-around player within. Only 26 years old, so still pretty young. He's going to sign a 4-year, $45 million deal, somewhere in that territory. People ask me where I'm getting these costs from. I'm taking somewhat of them from Sports Track. I'm also trying to give a little bit more of an eyeball beyond Sports Track and, put the numbers in where as realistically as I can get. They may be more 450 on this one. I think that's going to be hard pressed for him to get there. Centers don't tend to get paid that amount of money, though. He's a really good one. As you can see with this, though, versus the cost you're paying to a Trey Smith, you could go get your center situation taken care of at half the price, essentially, and then still have money left over to maybe go and address either the left guard or the right guard with the lesser player of Trey Smith. So another bit of a thing that stands out on this when you look at this guy. But again, just good all-around player. It's a little bit like Trey Smith. There's not a lot to talk about this in that. Are you paying a high price? Yeah, you're paying a high price. Do you know what you're going to get? Yeah. You know what you're going to get, and you're not paying for over-the-hill services. These are the type of deals that have not been signed by John Schneider in the last 13, 14 years here with this organization, and maybe have only been signed really once. Everything else is in-house deals or a trade or whatever. So this would be him going outside of where he'd be in the norms. But boy, this would certainly help you out in a big fashion. And now you've got your center position set up. You have less of a need to have to move Haynes to center now and more of an opening to slide him back over to guard instead of that, potential transition we're anticipating. But Drew Dahlman is a really good player. Another one that I don't think I'm going to have to hard sell many of you on. Many of you are already well aware of this guy, and that he would be a fine addition. That this is one of those signings like Trey, where if it's signed and you're a Hawk fan, you're really not going to be worried the least bit about how much the cost and price really is being presented. You're going to be, thank God, we got another certain part there in place on a line that was really the glaring issue to this team last year. And you are going to see this free agent period, for me, driven heavily in some of these guys I'm going to look at by offensive linemen. I'm really guided in this direction, not because I don't like the guys in this draft on the offensive line, but if we're trying to get this thing to getting to a contending state, and what I hear from many of my 12s out there, where you guys know with me, I've been a little bit on, I can kind of go either way on this, where we take the one step back for two steps forward, or just be hyper aggressive, or not hyper aggressive, but that we want to be contenders. And my thinking with that is that you got to be a little bit hyper aggressive then if that's going to be your mind state. This isn't just going to happen by hoping the sunshine keeps coming down through the clouds and gets that seed to come up and breaks through, and all those young cats can just get wizened real quick and we're good to go. I think that's going to be a bit of a leap. I think that's the same kind of leap we've been just hoping for in recent seasons. It's going to take more than that. It's going to take these kind of signings if you want to make that kind of jump to a true contender state this next year. Next up, Brian Kelly, another center. A little bit of an older guy, been around the block, former first-round pick at the center position. So this was a guy that, it's hard to be a center in a first-round pick. A pretty high, middle of the road, middle first-round pick, I believe, is where he was at. So I see 3 years, $30 million. You don't have to spend as much on this kind of guy than you'd have to spend on the other two guys. You don't have to give as much contractual obligation to the fourth year. I think a 3-year deal would get it done. He is 31. He has had some up and down years in his play in recent years at times, coming off a good year last year. 12th was his positional rank, which may not seem super special, but again, you're not paying high costs on this guy at this point. I think you're going to get a pretty good value deal overall. And then getting top 10 level of play from the center position has not happened for your Seahawks. Absent 1 year of Ethan Posick, no, not Ethan Posick. It was the guy that Justin Britt, that we changed from right tackle to right guard, became a center. He gave you 1 season kind of in that territory, and then it's only Max Unger here in the last about 15 years for the position. So another hardy upgrade. He's not going to be maybe as potentially dominating as you might get from some of the other cats at the top of this list, but again, the cost goes down a little bit. You know you're getting another leader there on the offensive line who's going to be able to handle all the offensive line play calls. I think he'll be able to run all of what the scheme would ask him to run as far as, getting to outside zone, some of the lateral steps you have to take from an offensive line perspective, agility that's required for the position to pull off those kind of blocks. I think that he can do it along with these other couple guys at the top. Staying with the offensive line tradition, folks, and look, I'm going to hammer this. Like I said, we got other positions I'll look at with this, but these are the guys that just to me really have stood out as guys that I would like to jump on with 2 feet if we get an opportunity. And the next guy up on number 4 on my list is going to be Micah Becton. Now, Becton is a guy that was a former top 10 pick in the draft for the New York Jets, and he really was struggling with injuries, wasn't quite a fit out there at the tackle position. Got the idea, we bang on Nick Sirianni, but he reportedly got this idea to move this guy from tackle into guard. And you go, I don't know if that's going to work. He's legit 6'6". He's just but he is a very big man. As Coach Carroll once said, mass moves mass, and bigger mass will move smaller mass. And that is what you get with a guy like Mekhi Becton, who also then kind of gives you some of those former tackle feet in there and pass protection as well. He is not a dominating guy necessarily, I think, in what he gives you, though, again, this is his first season to the position of guard. You could say maybe he's going to get better as we go in the future. Not an old guy at 25 years old. 18th was his positional rank, but as a first-time guard in doing that the first season, maybe you look at that as a guy that we could sign on this deal at 3 years, $33 million, but then yet he's got that upside still there as he gets more comfortable with the position. A real possibility. And so a guy that gives you kind of the best of both worlds there, where he gives you this great natural size that you'd like to kick in there at right guard to move those nose tackles out of position, but then at the same point in time, a bit of the mobility you might look for, like to get to the outside zone game, or maybe pull him out in front at times. And he can do maybe just a little bit of that with some of his mobility. But Becton is a guy that won't, I think, cost a ton. I'm certainly expecting the Eagles to try and retain him. They don't tend to want to let their offensive linemen go. They might let other positions go, but they will stay invested in that offensive line. And he had such a good, solid year for them down the line, and he's still at such a young age. You really do, I think, still have some hope here that there's even a little bit more on that upside there. But love Micah Becton as an option here, too, if they can woo him. We'll see if the Eagles let him go. Tevin Jenkins, is at number 5, and he is a guy that has got a little bit of injury concern with what he brings to bear here. 26 years old, so a young guy, a guy that was another guy that was a tackle convert into guard coming into this league. So you looked at him in Oklahoma State, as I think is where he was coming out of, and he's an all right tackle, might work as an NFL tackle, definitely really probably could work as a left guard. And he has worked as a left guard. Has he got a little bit of these injury things that have been more nagging stuff coming here over there? It's not as much like torn ACL here, rip quad there. It's more of just these nagging little things kind of coming along there that kind of held him back. But when he has played, he's played well. 13th overall rank last year by PFF. Been pretty solid out there when he's been on the football field. Much like Mekhi Becton, he gives you this really good size as well as then giving you the former tackle to guard convert, so you can get some of the mobility within it as far as fitting within the designs of this scheme. He has got a nasty streak to him. He's a finisher. It's really just the question comes back a little bit like with just on a different scale from Becton, where both those two guys got a little bit of injury concerns to him. He's got a little more injury concerns to him. He is playing left guard. Becton has been able to be more healthier recently. I think that's where the value draws kind of relatively the same for both of these guys at like 3 years, $33 million. Somewhere in that territory, maybe 36. But I don't think they get 4-year deals. Both of them have individual questions about whether or not there's a certainty there in giving them that kind of money. But a guy that could solve your left guard situation right off the jump, it is much easier to find right guards. You already have even 2 on your roster right now that you at least have for depth pieces there in Bradford and Lumea. So say nothing of Haynes, if he still is going to remain there. So this would be definitely a smart signing as well from what it would take care of, which was really the glaring need there on that line right now, which is left guard. And left guards are hard to find. I think even in this draft, there's a couple guys that I like, but most of them are former tackles going to guard, where you're going to have to do a lot of math there. Yeah, there is a Booker, but then there's the Wyatt Milliams and maybe Arante Urises and these kind of guys where you're like, I think he can do it. But with Tevin, he's shown he can make that transition, and I like what he brings a lot. Another guy, again, good finisher, good nasty streak, good all-around play between pass protection and run blocking in his game, and I think he'd be a good fit. Number 6 is a guy that I'm not big on going after, but this would be a John Schneider special, so I got to include it because some of this list has got to include the possibilities of what John has done in the past. Kevin Zeitler. John has signed former Detroit Lions offensive lineman before in free agency, Evan Brown a couple of years ago, not to a big deal. And Zeitler is old, 34 years of age. He is up there, and he has some fluctuation in his play year in and year out and what he gives you. And sometimes he gets some solid play, sometimes not so solid. Last year really had an upper level year in what he brought. 3rd was his positional rank by PFF last season. That's one of the better ones actually in his career at the age of 34. That's going to allow him to probably pull out a 1-year, $9-10 million deal from somebody that he can say, hey, that's where my performance was at. I'm at this very important position. So, give me that deal. I could see the Lions retaining him. I don't know if they're going to have quite the money to do that on a 1-year deal. I can't see anybody giving him a multi-year deal at 34. Could also be a little bit off in the value on this. This is where Sports Track has him at as far as what they think his cost is. It could be a little bit lower because of his age. This is a bit of a John Schneider special, though. Be it he has gone with slightly younger players, but you've also done the older ones. We just did Laken Tomlinson, who would be kind of like what your Kevin Zeitler equivalent would be a little bit on this one, very similar to me on that. And maybe the team feels like he can tap back into that 3rd overall level of play as far as PFF goes in his grades and what he was doing. I'm reticent to believe that because in watching the tape in prior years with him, it's just been a little bit, again, up and down at times, and especially when you're giving him that kind of money on a 1-year deal, it gets a little bit tight. But if offensive line is going to be a priority and taking care of it before the draft's a priority so that you're not driven to need, I think that Zeitler is a guy that's very much a guy John would be considering, especially given his past. Number 7 is a guy not super excited about, but again, this falls in line like the Zeitler thing with something that John's done in prior history. We've seen him do it in going after guards within their own division. Mike Iupati, for instance. That's Aaron Banks, kid out of Notre Dame a couple of years ago. Didn't like him a lot coming out of Notre Dame. Was not a big fan of what he brought to the table. I thought he would be below average as a pro, and he's kind of been below average as a pro. 33 was his PFF positional rank last season, but he is 27 years old. He's coming off the rookie deal. He's played in essentially the same offense that we're running right now with Shanahan and the wide zone and all of that. So while he's maybe not been particularly really good recently necessarily, functional and he'll know where to go day one if you walk him in here and what his responsibilities are going to be. Probably knows even the verbiage, I would guess, to say. And I don't think he's going to cost a lot. 3 years, 20, 3 years, $24 million, somewhere in that territory is probably what he's going to bring. And that's fine if that's where they want to go, or if they don't want to spend, they're looking at the sticker shock price of Trey Smith and they're going, how about 320? Can we do that? 4/100's a lot. 320, that's a little bit more. That's a little more up our alley. Let's go there. We do the 320. So it's maybe a possibility. He is a left guard. Hard to find those, as I said about prior on that. These guys are not easy to locate. So you've got to kind of jump on him when you get a chance. That's why he will, even though he hasn't necessarily performed great, he will probably get paid and probably will get a multi-year deal at that. Next guy up is our first defensive guy, and this is going to be a surprise here for you guys. Calais Campbell. Calais Campbell, man, the guy that just will not retire. He refuses to do so. And he still is playing at a really good level. This guy was your 6th rated for his position, 6th rated defender last year for his position. A guy that John Schneider has had just, an affinity for a very long time. He's talked many times about drafting guys that can fit to being the Calais Campbell-like guy. I know on the surface of this, you say he's 38 years old. Why would you do this? But there is a need with potentially, as I think we are going to move on from Roy Robertson Harris, and we're going to move on from Draymond Jones. He could come in there and fulfill that role as an early down power edge role guy. You could slide him inside at times to take some snaps in there if you need him to do so. We still saw his impact last year against our own Seattle Seahawks, where he was able to create some pressure on a play, get his hand up, tip the ball up, cause an interception on the backside. I can't tell you how long it seems like he's been wearing our ass out. But Calais Campbell is still out there. He's not going to be expensive. You know he's going to want to try to play for a true contender, and he has familiarity within the Mike McDonald defense. Having been with the Baltimore Ravens prior, he's a fit to the defense and what he brings in that skill set. And I know he's old. But I was just saying this last week. Reggie White, I think, was an all-pro at 38 years old still. So there are sometimes just those freakish kind of guys. And when you're 6'11" and 335 pounds, you can still kind of make things happen. That old man strength he's got, that grown man strength. I do think it'll be a 1-year, $9 million deal, somewhere in that territory, but I wouldn't be mad at this because that guy's just been so bloody consistent over the years. Dalton, I have the wrong guy listed up on here. So, yeah. Okay. I didn't change the name, but it is BJ Hill instead of Dalton Risner. Sorry about that. But BJ Hill at 20 would be my guy here at 9. You are going to potentially see Jaron Reed move this offseason in free agency. I think that, in fact, there's a good chance of that happening. Seahawks may want to go for a little bit of a younger guy here in BJ Hill. I might have him a little bit high on the list here as far as want or need. Guy that can give you at times a couple of snaps in there at the nose tackle here and there. I wouldn't call him a pure nose, but you can slide him on there in there a little bit, kind of move him around on the defensive line. I don't know if he'd be, again, a high priority with this. 23rd was his positional rank defensive tackle position in the sport last year, but just maybe an alternative if they want to bring in a guy a little bit like a Jaron Reed kind of type, but again, just a little bit younger. And I think he'd be more, I think 324 is probably more him. Dalton Risner, we go back to the offensive line at number 10. This is one that seems like absolutely the type of one that I would see John Schneider kind of move here. This is a guy that just has my spidey senses going, this is just a John special here. Risner's bounced around the league in a couple places. He's had some good years. He was 22nd last year by PFF's rank. That would, put him kind of close to the territory of where Laken Tomlinson was last year. He is 29, so a couple of years younger than a Laken. Probably gets like a 3 years, $18 million. So for a John Schneider who thinks they're overpaid, this is the kind of move to be like, yeah, that's what I'm willing to spend on that. That's what I'll give you for that. For a guy that, typically doesn't value them in that way. And Risner is functional. He, again, has, I think, some familiarity in running what this offense is going to require him to run from the guard position. He's a pro. He walks in day one. Maybe not give you a lot of flash, but you maybe don't have as much question. I certainly think he'd be a bit of an upgrade over Laken Tomlinson, maybe just a measurable one like this, but a little bit of one. Wouldn't get me really excited, but this one just feels like one that I can see John Schneider going, yeah. Brady Christensen is a center guard, move him all over the offensive line. Hell, he was a tackle back in college at BYU, I believe. And a guy that would be another guy that there'd be a little bit of a value here, a little bit like Risner. 24th was his PFF rank last year, 28 years old. Age isn't too bad there, where you're at least maybe thinking, hey, we're getting him in the prime of his career. He's got versatility where he can play all over the offensive line for us if we need to. There's some maybe value within that. And the cost, 3 years, $12 million. He's not going to cost you, I don't think, much of anything. Maybe 3 years, 14. But it would be a very, very inexpensive kind of deal for John. And again, fitting more to what John has done in the past. Much like these last couple of offensive line I've shown you, there's not a lot of flash to this guy. There's not a lot he's giving you that you're like, yeah. But if John's looking to get some insurance policies where he is looking to target guys in the draft, but he wants to also have these other items there in order to have some supplementing going on there so that he's got a little bit of a double dose situation going on, you could understand that. And it would make some sense and wouldn't be completely out of line for John to take that approach at all, I would think. 12, we've got Will Hernandez of the Arizona Cardinals, former New York Giant that went over to the Cardinals last year. He did not have a full season for them, so I think he played like about half the year or so and then went down, but was playing pretty good football at that time, 21st ranked in the NFL by PFF, but pretty good scores along the line. He fit pretty well within that offense in the run game and how they did that. As a big man, as you can see here on the thumbnail, he can move people. And a guy that I think that fits again toward John. This happens a lot with teams within their own divisions, is that they'll look at a player, they become free agents, and then they kind of pluck them, having the opportunity to see him twice a year. It just kind of can develop an affinity on that from certain teams' perspective, where they're like, man, that guy's, if we get a chance with that one guy, let's grab him up and bring him out in here again to a deal that's not going to cost a lot because, number one, the age, 29 years old with Will, doesn't have a huge history of high-level play. And then also the fact that he is coming off the injuries from the prior year. So another one of those, what I'll call John specials. You know what I'm saying? You guys know what I'm saying. We all want Trey, man. We all want Drew, but we all know the John specials are coming. You know what I mean? We're all looking for the top shelf, and he's about to bust out the well. It's like it's well liquor today, boys, girls. 13, we got another elder statesman, Brandon Scherf. A left guard, another one of those rarities to go out there and find. 13th on the list here for me because the play has not been particularly good recently from Brandon Scherf. He does look like a guy at the end of the road, may eventually be a guy that does retire this offseason. But he would be that Laken Tomlin special like guy, 1 year, $3 million deal. This list is not as much about me wanting to put a wish list together to give you guys there's no chance that this team goes and looks at. I don't think I'd be doing any of you any favors by going down the line and saying, hey, let's go get this one guy over here. He's the one. And then we all come back and you guys are like, man, we should have gotten the guy. We know that that's not John's ways. It's not coming from the Green Bay Packers organization. It's like asking the guy to change his religion in a lot of ways. I think he could go outside of it for a guy like Dahlman or a guy like Trey Smith or somebody that really brings the conviction to him. But a lot of these other moves that come secondary, I think are going to be more along kind of taking a bit of that, lower end approach, trying to find value as he possibly can, try to get the insurance policy essentially for the draft so he can draft for value truly and not be pulled to the offensive line need that might exist if he doesn't make these moves. The one thing is that I will say too with this is there's not a lot of shining, glowing, bright offensive linemen and they're out in free agency. Teams got good offensive linemen. They tend to hold on to them with the death grip. So this is also why you're kind of going through these guys as far as other positions and places. Next guy up is going to be Tier Tart. Tier Tart is a name you might not be familiar with, but we got ourselves one of our few actual true blue guys out there that can play some nose tackle. And a guy that could maybe remove some of Byron Murphy's need to have to play some of the nose tackle for what he's doing. So he can go over to the 3-tech, and then you don't have to go then find a replacement for Jaron Reed, because so many of Jaron Reed's snaps last year were not from the nose tackle position, but were actually from the 3-tech position. And TR had a really good year last year. 12th was his PFF positional rank. He did play a little bit of both, some 3-tech and that nose tackle role. A little bit all over the place on that line. 27 years old, so not tremendously old. I don't think it would be a big deal because this is a rotational piece along your defensive line. A guy that can help you as far as the run defense goes. He's going to big-bodied dude, keeps your linebackers cleared on the backside. Guys like Deion Henley were able to run around crazy town back there, partly because of the work this guy's doing up front. But I like his game and a guy that I could see the team target rather than, again, having to be drawn a little bit to the need of going for a nose tackle in this draft. especially if they might have to double dip at the nose tackle position. You're down Jonathan Hankins, right? He's out in free agency. Nobody's expecting him to be re-signed. Probably is going to go to retirement, but you really I don't think anybody out there believes that they can count on Cameron Young at this point either, do we? None of us look at that and go, yeah, he's ready to go next year. So you might have to double dip on this one with a guy like Tart and then going back and grabbing another nose tackle in this draft, a Stackhouse or Williams out there with Ohio State, or a couple of other guys may be an option in that way they go. But wouldn't mind T.R. Tart. I think he'd be a good signing. And boy, finally free Byron Murphy to go out there and do what he does best. We go with an edge here as my 15th guy, and I don't think the Hawks are likely to target an edge, partly because they don't have a huge need for it, though I do think they're going to let go of Uchenna Nwosu and save the money on that contract. So there may be more of an opening for this now for them to go out there and look for a guy like that. Derek Barnett is a guy that's played a long time in this league, it would seem like. It seems like he's been 10 years in the league, but he is only 28 years old, came in really young, coming off a pretty solid year. I know the positional rank, the PFF positional rank isn't great for him necessarily at 26, but he was pretty solid overall for the Texans this year. And a guy that I don't think is going to cost a lot of money, maybe more of like a 2-year kind of deal for him, maybe a 3-year, $21 million deal. But if the Hawks wanted to not necessarily, they don't have as much feeling that they like the edges in this class as much as some others do, and or the need. I mean, if they hold on to Uchenna Nwosu or whatever, and then they just kind of sign this as that fourth kind of to really just round everything out. But Derek's a very good pass rusher. He's going to get to the quarterback. He's going to create pressures, even if you want to fit him into just kind of that role exclusively at times. Don't think it's going to be a high push here, where I think they're likely to more go back to the draft and finding their edge in this draft if they go that route. But Barnett could be an option. Greg Gaines, former UW Husky, a guy that has bounced around through the league a little bit, can play that nose tackle role. And again, for the same reasons of Tart, free up a guy like Byron Murphy to go do what he does. This would be a bargain basement signing. He's not been playing particularly great. He's not been bad necessarily. I know the PFF grade isn't great here, and there's some injury stuff with him that he's been kind of fighting through in recent years. $2.5 million is what it would cost you. 1 year, 2 vet minimum deal essentially. Again, to give you a little bit of maybe what you might need is a doubling down here too, where you go with a Tart and a Gaines just to make sure you got your nose tackle position taken care of so that you can go into the draft and not have to do any of that. 17, we're going to go tight end, and an H-back tight end, Austin Hooper. The New England Patriot had a good year last year, was the 6th highest graded tight end in the sport by PFF. 30 years old. He's played for a good amount of time. I don't think he's going to cost a lot. Part of this is going to be because I do think he's exclusively more of an H-back guy than he is a true inline guy. You can line him up for some of that, and he'll be competent at times in it. You just don't want to keep him there 24/7. But then also, I think that the draft, and this being probably the deepest draft in 10 years that we've seen for tight ends, is really going to remove the ability of tight ends on the open market to maximize their value. They'd much rather have a weak draft that you can then, go, hey, I'm the belle of the ball here. I'm the brightest light in a room of darkness. So pay me my money. But unfortunately, at 30 years old, as that kind of position he plays, I don't think he gets a lot. And you go get this guy if you release a Noah Fant, which I am kind of expecting, and then you get to the draft and you are freed up a little bit in the draft to kind of now not have to push yourself to go take the tight end. I think they got to get 2 now because you got Farrell Brown moving on, and I don't think that the Brady Russell is the answer there for you. So you'd have to do Hooper and probably go get another inline guy somewhere in the draft or free agency. But Hooper is very, very competent as a pass catcher, really good route runner, good hands. So he's been very productive throughout his career in that way, in that what you kind of get. I think he gives you a lot as a pass catcher of the same stuff that Noah Fant gave you, and he might be even a little bit of a better blocker. I know Noah Fant was always supposed to be this guy that eventually got to this high side, but he just never seemed to ever really quite get there. 18, I've got a cornerback, a guy that I've had an affinity for a long period of time, and a guy that didn't have necessarily a good year last year, but don't take much away from that because of the fact that he was injured and he played very little amount of football. So there was some injury stuff with him. This would be a little bit of a reclamation kind of thing where he's been good absent that injury. He's the son of Asante Samuel, the former once great New England Patriot cornerback. He's not like his dad. He's a little bit more physical, a little bit more willing to tackle. Not the biggest cat out there, but only 25 years old. I think he's a former 2nd, 3rd round pick there for the Chargers, an outside kind of corner so he can play to that role of things. I think it'd be like a 1 year, $5 million deal. If you moved on from a guy like Rick Woolen, you had to double dip down and find a couple cornerbacks. Here's one you could kind of go out there and to pair with whatever else you're looking to do on the other side of the other moves there. as far as that goes. Hi, that was dramatic entrance. Very dramatic. Austin Corbett, former Ram offensive lineman, now with the Carolina Panthers, had himself the injury situation last year at the center position, but he is a functional guy. Another one of those John specials here where I could certainly see John going out there and picking up this guy, given his history of it, and going, well, he'll work for a year. We'll just plug and play him in their year, have him duke it out there with Oluwatimi, let the best man win, and we'll get functional play rather than, of course, elite play or good play. But is an option out there. Center, played a lot of football, not going to cost a lot of money. 1 year, $3 million deal, 1 year, $4 million deal at the most. And you do know what you're probably going to get at that point with Austin and what he gives. 29 years old, so he's not super old. But certainly this is not an exciting, this would not be a terribly exciting signing, just more along the lines of what they have done in recent history. Another outside corner potential option, and I put it at 20 rather than higher because of the fact that I don't think it's a high priority, but it is an option for them to go, especially if they like this guy a lot, and that's Byron Murphy. He is a former Husky, right? 27 years old, coming off a really good season with the Vikings. I think he had 6 interceptions. PFF had him with a 22nd rank out there, but I do think that he has played better than maybe where the PFF rank has him kind of listed at here. And a guy that can tackle well, can cover, can take away the ball, gives you a good all-around play. He's not a star for the position, but he's becoming a free agent at just the right time, in my opinion, with the season he had. He is going to probably get somewhere in the neighborhood of a 4-year, $82 million deal, so that's very pricey, and part of why I don't think Seattle would be in on this. But again, if they're looking to address that other cornerback position and solidify it, rather than sort of rob, especially if you're bringing Reek back, rather than just kind of having Job out there and going, well, we hope Job can get it done, and well, maybe Nehemiah comes up and maybe we can draft another guy in the 4th round and something will go there. Rather than that approach, you actually go get a tried and true. Now, you spend a lot of money to do that. Again, why I don't think they're likely to do it, but is a potential option here for them and a way for them to go. There's a lot of different roads to building this team, and it is a need right now outside corner. Say nothing of if you do happen to actually move Reek Woolen, which is a possibility. My last guy here, which is a little bit of the extra, and I didn't post his PFF score because of the fact that he was another guy injured last year. Another guy that I've liked a lot since going back to college at Alabama. And a guy that I thought a little bit would potentially maybe work a little bit better as a guard than as a tackle at the next level. I thought he'd be better than he's been as a tackle. He hasn't been bad. It's been below average, certainly by league standards, and that's Jedrick Wills. And Jedrick, again, last season had a bit of an injury situation come up, but he kind of feels like maybe this year's Mekhi Becton. If you want to be one of those teams that rather than reacting to a team that's at the forefront like a Philadelphia Eagles team and grabbing a Mekhi and saying, hey, what if we move this guy from this former top 10 first-round pick? What if we moved him from tackle to guard? Rather than being reactionary to what they're doing, take that same model and apply it to a player like this, where you go give him a 1-year, $4 million deal, and you say, we're kicking you into guard now, and let's see if you can take into there. You haven't worked necessarily well at tackle. Let's move you into this other spot and see if you can go in there and operate right in there. But I think Jedrick could be a little bit of that same kind of situation like a Mekhi a little bit, similar sort of starts to the careers and what they've had going on. And I think a guy that probably could work as a guard if you kicked him in there. He's got good bend. I think it could work in there. It's a little bit advanced math, but I wouldn't mind seeing them try something like this out. So that's my list of guys. Let me know what you guys think below or in the comments or in the chat here today, as we'll have some discussion going forward on this. But let me know what you think. Was there somebody that I left out that you would have liked to have seen? Is there a value-based signing out there maybe that it would have been more interesting for us to make? I tried to kind of pour through the list as I could. It is a light free agent period. There's not a lot of guys out there. There are some teams that have a lot of money to spend. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out for what guys truly cost, and if Seattle can even compete on some of these guys if they want to, being like the Trey Smiths and the Drew Dahlmans. But there are guys that can help this team out. You can get this offensive line put together. Yes, the cost would be high, but the team has the money to do so. It's all about the will. Does John Schneider have the will? And not the kind of will, not the half measure will, the full measure will, to get this offensive line improved and improved quickly if this team truly, really does want to be a contender next year. I think that's the center point of this, is that there's no way around this. You want to be a contender, this thing needs to get addressed, and you can't slow roll how you address it like you've done for years. I'm saying this merely if you're truly trying to contend next year. If you want to take the step back, John, if you want to hit the pause button, John, if you want to say, hey, we got to pull all this down to the foundation because it ain't right, fine, then take that approach too. I'm good with that as well. But if it is to become a contender, if it is to go that direction, then you must do these things. If you just go and try to draft it out, we know how that's going to play out. We've seen it for 10 years. Yeah, even my cat knows. Even my cat knows. Folks, please do hit the like button if you could for me today. Appreciate everybody watching and tuning on in. We did this a little bit earlier today because I just wanted to kind of get this rolling. I've got some stuff going on this evening here. But thank you guys for watching. Let's see where your guys' mind is at on this. I got a couple donations here I want to catch up on here. Along this, thank you for the $10 donation. It says, sorry, man. As a Rams fan, Luka videos are winning for me. I get it. If I was in LA too, I'd be very excited by that kind of move and deal. I mean, I think everybody across the nation along this has been pretty much of uniform voice on this going, it feels like the Mavs got fleeced on this deal completely. And it's almost like they just about not fully just gave Luka away, but basically hand him away. I mean, was he doing keg stands in the locker room? Like, what do you guys that's all you guys get? But part of it too seems to be as you start to unpack along this, some of this stuff, it seems that this new ownership of Dallas, gosh, it sucks to hear this with these ownership groups. I don't understand this. I'm going to go buy a sports franchise and then claim poverty thing. It's the weirdest thing to me. Mariners do it in our city along this, where you buy a sports franchise and then you say, I don't want to spend like these others because I don't have the money. Why did you buy the sports franchise? Just don't buy the sports franchise then. Go invest in something else. Go do, well, you just kind of always want to own you've always wanted to kind of own a team that was going to suck. That was your whole goal in life. But that's the thing with the Mavericks here. And they wanted to get this, they have a casino or something that they're trying to get made. And they didn't want to give Luka the contract that he was going to cost. And sports is in a weird place at times in certain areas of things. Sanchez, thank you for the $2 donation. It's good to see you in the house, man. It says Seahawks 2026. Well, it's not where most people want to be at with this. I got a cat hair in my nose. Like, goodness. You're hairy. You're hairy as hell. It's not where a lot of people want to hear on this, Sanchez. They don't want to hear the potential of this, look, there is a smart approach to this in looking at the cap situation where I've said to this saying, look, we're 27 million and we can pull all these levers and we can drive down hard and we can make some super aggressive moves. And I'm okay if they want to take that approach, but there is the other road that I've talked about being, okay, where you're at right here, as I'm showing on the board, your two other teams are lower than you. Let's just take how much dead money you have. There's only two other teams with less money than you have to spend right now as we enter into this offseason. But then you go to 26. And 26, you find yourself up at the top, don't you? You're right up there. Top 4 amount of money. 27. Top 2 amount of money. Only the Rams have more space. And you go, boy, it almost looks like 26 and 27 is more of the time to put the pedal down. Especially given that the team would appear to have a lot of work that needs to be done in order for them to get to that, kind of contending state of things. What's that? I hear you, kitty. Dogzilla, thank you for the $2 donation. Why is interior offensive line not the focus of everything? Fools. It's at the forefront of where I'm standing, Dogzilla. You've got to come into this offseason, and this needs to be hammered. The interior three positions, your offensive line. And you've got two things going on at once here, where not only do you have to improve the line from a talent standpoint, but you've got to find a way to get the cohesion going quickly too as well. And it's hard for young players already just kind of learning the ropes to get then the cohesion and chemistry and all of that stuff working along the line as they're trying to learn how to be a good pro. What about just getting good pros that then can develop the continuity and chemistry right from the jump? And a bit of what I'm being a proponent for here a little bit in the structure of this and trying to make this a little bit of an offensive line driven free agent period. where now you take care of that, and now that can get jump-started a little bit faster. You get a Drew Dahlman, and now the line calls are taken off the quarterback, and it's now going to be easier for a quarterback like Geno Smith to understand and get acquainted with this offensive system and learn it better. How easier it is to learn and understand the route concepts and understand the read progressions and understand the pre-snap indicators, and stay on that if you're not having to call out every different pass protection in the book before you get to that point. I think that could be a big help. So it's definitely where I think a lot of the fans are at, and I hope this is the year where John maybe looks to step a little bit outside of that normal way that he's approached the position in free agency, which is usually to go very cheap and to go very old. It's not a good combination. Board Skyler says time to rock out with the flock out. We got the flock out, man. BLL Ben, how you doing? It's good to see you in the house. Give me one sec here, folks. Be right back. Alpha's Batted Balloons. How are you going? It's good to see you, man. Rob Red could go for the long HawksNest stream right about now. We'll get cooking it up today. I will be on tonight too as well. I'll be on tonight really late, actually. We got the Civilization 7 games coming out. So I'm going to be over not on this channel, but I will be on the Twitch side over on TheSeahawksNest on Twitch. Tonight we'll be on there about 9 o'clock or so. And I will probably be streaming throughout late into the evening. So if we happen to miss some of your topic of discussion today on the channel on this, you can join me out over there, as I'll be over there throughout the night. Free Truth, how you doing? Harborside, hello. Mythic says sign a good guard and center, draft a good guard within the first 2 rounds. Get it over with, John. No excuses now. No excuses, John. We're going to hammer you if you don't do it. We're going to take your lunch money. And we're not even going to leave you a brownie. Herbicide, we for sure need a left guard. IMO, we need a right guard because Haynes and Bradford ain't it. Need a backup right tackle because I don't trust Abe to be healthy. Would like better center because why not? This is why I say it's got to be a focal point. There's only so many things you can get done in an off season, especially when you are limited by money. You've got to make things priorities. Priorities. And I'm sure that Mike has parts and pieces that he wants added to his defense, but we've got to stem off the bleeding first. We need a tourniquet first. The tourniquet needs to be that this offensive line doesn't sink this whole team like it's done a few different times over in recent seasons. We've had multiple quarterbacks broken, Geno nearly broken apart a couple of times. We gotta stop this. This is doing nobody any favors. It's not helping our team out. And hopefully they finally learn their lesson on that. Fabrice, go Hawks. Herbicide, why a running back? I don't have a running back on there. Oh, I see. You saw Snail's thing. Snail says, I want no tackle and running back in early rounds. Running back's a hard one for me. That's going to be a tough grab for me, Snail, because we're just so deep right now, running back. Space guy Will Campbell in the first. Sign me up for that. Shane Germany, left guard, right guard, center would be great from free agency. That'd be ideal. If he gets it all done there, folks, think about it. You set yourself getting up into the draft and you can stay value all the way. So if Malachi Starks is there at 18 and he slides down to that spot because people are just like, man, the kid's really good. We just can't take a slot safety that high. We go, we can. Maybe you jump at that point. Donnie, how you doing? MWM says, I'm all for Trey Smith, but I would be just as happy with Mekhi Becton too. I wouldn't be angry at either of them, man. Both would put a big smile on my face. Herzad, I guess the new O-line coach is a firm believer in zone blocking. He loves quick O-linemen to pull it off. Probably going to be more of where they're looking to lean towards, Herbicide. And there's so many of these centers, tackles in this draft that convert to guard types like a Kelvin Banks, I think Ursay is a guy like that. Could be a little bit of that, though he's a little bit heavier than they might look for at the position with that mobility he could give you inside. But there's a couple guys in this draft. The Wyatt Milliam probably gives you that cutting inside there too. Zabel. Dizzy Walker is a stud. O'Dwyer says the Seahawks are the type of team I want the Seahawks to be, absolutely stacked in the trenches. We're going to do one more show this week, and part of why we might not go super late today on this show, because we're going to do another show here in 2 days, part of what I want to kind of drive for this offseason, where if I can do a few more kind of shows and just kind of rather than the super long ones, we do more of them kind of laced in. But the show is going to be centered around, you're kind of reading my mind on this a little bit, where it's going to be a show centered around what the Eagles have done. They've been to 3 Super Bowls in 8 years. And there are some certain specific things that they do beyond just addressing the trenches in their approach that I think are lessons that John could learn from that organization, ways that he can adjust within his own game, pivoting into more of a direction that's a bit more cutting edge from a front office standpoint. But I agree with Dwyer. They do a lot of things that you nod your head to and you're like, smart. Smart. Thank you again, Long This, for that $10 donation. I'm glad you're hyper. Luca. Good afternoon, Brian. Shane Germany, take Booker at 18. That's definitely a possibility, man. Nobody's crying any tears if that happens. Mr. Kane, brother from another mother, how you doing? Wait, is this live right now? Heck yeah. Hit that like button like it owes you money. That's right, folks. Please hit that like button if you can for me. It does help me out tremendously. Helps me grow. Shane says, why would Zeitler leave Detroit, though? The Detroit Lions are currently sitting with very little bit of cap space right now, as I understand it. Let's go over here to them. So where are they at here? No, they're not bad, I guess. They're top 10-ish. But I do believe that they're going to have to... Are they through the 3rd season of Aiden Hutchinson right now? I think they got to maybe decide on Aiden. Let me double check that. Yeah, so I know Aiden just went down to an injury and that they're not going to want to necessarily sign him to a contract extension, but they're probably going to have to put a contract extension together for him on that side of it. But I don't know if they're going to, when it's all said and done with moves, they get on the Garrett cycle of it. They have let as well. In addition to this, they have let in recent years good offensive linemen walk. Evan Brown, they let go. What was it last year? Jonah Jackson, they let him sign a big deal. I think that they probably trust Fraley's ability to develop there to where but he might stay. It's a possibility. Steph, are you saying we're a contender? I would only say we're a contender if we make the moves that I say we've got to go. I think that this is an offseason where there's a fork in the road. And the fork is, I think John wants to create a 3rd road, but there's only 2 roads. There is the road that, do you want to be a contender? Because for 10 seasons, Steph, you've looked at yourself organizationally, you've looked at your fans, you've shouted at the top of your lungs from the coaches to the general manager that you're a contender, that you see yourself as a contender that season, every year of those 10 years. And you've taken that same similar approach every offseason to the way that you've taken things, which is not to be hyper aggressive, which is just to kind of be somewhat aggressive, get in that middle road. We'll never sort of ever rebuild in. We'll never ever sort of really try to go contend. We'll just kind of be in this middle road where we're kind of trying some stuff, but not all the stuff. And so if you go into this offseason and do what they would atypically do, which is, we're going to go and we're going to sign a couple of butt-low offensive linemen, cheap, old, and then we'll draft a couple of guys, and then we'll hope for all of that to shake out in the wash to giving us a good offensive line. We know that that's probably not something that's going to work. Or it hasn't worked for 10 years. Maybe it works now like a broken clock, but doesn't seem like a good approach. So they got to go aggressive if they want to get there, Steph. I don't think that we're just an inch away. I think we're still a foot. And if you want to cover the space of that chasm in one off season, it doesn't just get done with a light, soft step. The Hawks are going to have to pound this out a little bit. And I don't know if they're willing to. I don't know if John's got the stones to do it. I don't know if he's got the ability to recognize the fact that they got to do it to get there on that. But if they don't do that, I'm not going to be walking around to the end of the offseason looking at you guys in the face saying this team's a contender. But I'm going to be looking at you guys in the face. I'm going to be saying, well, maybe we, like all these seasons in 10 years, we can maybe slide into the back door of the playoffs. And, maybe we'll get a win in the playoffs. Maybe if things all work out right, maybe if we get a home game, and then the team can come back to us with that one home playoff win and say, see, we're making progress. See, we're just tink along, just tink along. And I'm going to be in that kind of mindset of it. But if they do go aggressive like I'm advocating for, and they actually show that, hey, no, we recognize this needs a shakeup. We recognize this is going to take more in this given year if we want to make this happen. That this has not worked. That we've not given the fans a great product here in the last 10 years. That we have one playoff win since 2017. We talk this big talk. Now we got to walk the walk. I hear all that big talk. I hear the General Schneider thing. We're contending. We're going for it this year. We're not rebuilding. Heck no, we're not rebuilding. We're going for it. We're in it. We're in this now. We're going to do this right now. Show me. Show me now. Less of this, less yippity yappity, and more of just showing me now with the actions and how you're doing it. Because otherwise it's like a politician where they're just trying to sell us on a story that's just completely untrue. Mike should be able to get the D playing better than the talent, but it would still be nice to have another game wrecker. Kubiak has potential, and this is the best situation he has been in. Well said, Micah. Very well said. Said, I'm liking the new O-line coach we're getting. Me too. Real good, rich history in this league and being an O-line coach. Seems like he's had a good amount of successes. I feel really good about this guy as well. Kurt Bernard says the John special, laughing out loud, digging the beard, bro. Thank you, man. I might go big thick this offseason. I'm thinking about going full on Old Testament style here. Kurt says you look a little bland without it. Well, I'm getting old, Getting old. I go back and forth at times with it, Sometimes the beard I can deal with. Sometimes I'm like, I got to shave it. It's driving me crazy. Post missed the start. Who was number one? Number one was Trey Smith. Post Eminescence. SL Hazard, we can draft O-line, but if we grab a vet guard who isn't a bubble wrap dinosaur, that would be nice. From God's lips to my ears, man. I'm so tired of the old ass lineman. I'm so tired of it. You see those guys walking out like Mike Iupati on those poor ankles of his. Like you could hear his ankles crack and groan every time he walked on them. Like, I don't know how the mics on the field side picked it up, but every time he walked out from the huddle to get into a stance, You're like, oh, just let the man retire. O'Dwyer says, I'll be on the whiskey all next season if John goes for the Lake and Tomlinson type options in free agency. I'm not going to be happy with it either. And I ain't buying what they're selling at that point if they're going to try to sell me that that's a team that's going to contend. I'm going to feel like, oh, so you need Mike McDonald to be a miracle worker then. He doesn't just nearly need to be a really good coach and a cutting-edge defensive mind. He needs to be a miracle worker. Stuart Erickson says, why does John Schneider continue getting 3 scrubs instead of 1 elite player? I wish I had a great answer for it, Stuart. I usually have at least a decent answer to give you in trying to kind of make a guess on these kind of things. I would understand it if it was a new strat that he had tried for a year or two and like there hadn't been enough time to really see if it was taking root. It's another thing when it is the same approach for a 10-year period. When every year, even when you do, this is a year where we don't have cap space going in necessarily, but you've had years where you've had cap space and you still took that same approach where you had $50 million, but you still went for the value signings. And we can see he's, sometimes done this in his past, not recently as much, but in this past, he's done this with drafts too. It's more about getting more picks. Give me just more swings. Then you start to go, well, how much is it now you just needing swings than it is you intelligently targeting the right player that will fit to your system, that will give you improved play, that might be a good signing on top of that. It now becomes a little bit of you just want to through a numbers game solve this. And that's not going to work, and it hasn't worked. And he's got to stop with this roll of it. It's not working, man. You tried it for 10 straight years. It's not working. This has not been an example of 10 years of success here in Seattle. It's not. And if he does it again this offseason, I just won't understand what it is that he thinks is going to happen other than, again, just it's almost like Carroll at the end with his defense and offensive approach. It's just like, it'll eventually come around to working again. Like, then I'll be done waiting around for it to work again. I want you to start to drive things forward on this, not wait around for it to hopefully work. Just my time, and I can sense in you guys in the chat too. We're just kind of at a little bit of an end point on frustration with this guy on this. It's like, come on, this is getting old. SL, I'm lusting over Myles Garrett. If DK and Lockett have to go to make the money work, then I'm with it. He's that special of a player. Myles Garrett's awesome, and I think Seattle would be in on a move for him. And don't know where the cost will land on this. Don't know if we can compete with some of the other teams out there that'll be looking to grab him as well. I mean, Detroit team could just go crazy town and just be like, it's like you're having a cattle auction and they just suddenly go in there and they're like, 3 first-round picks. Like, 3 first-round picks. I got 3 first-round picks. Anybody else got me 3? I got 4 first-round picks. No, 3 first-round picks and 2 first-round, 2 round. That'll be it. 3 first-round picks to Detroit Lions. And like, I could see Detroit really doing that move. It makes a lot of sense. They can kind of pull it off cap-wise if they wanted to. They need help with that because Aiden's not probably going to be at 100% next year. Even when he does come back, I'd be shocked if he was back to his, just normal, typical self, bouncing back off that really horrendous leg injury he had. But if they got Garrett, I'd be hyped as hell. SL giving Mike McDonald that kind of piece to work with on defense, it would be amazing, amazing. Jeff says plug Pumpkin in. She's got enough size right now where she might be able to give you some early rundown snaps as a right guard. She could clear a few holes right now at her size. Dogzilla, that cat looks like Jackson Dart, kind of useless. Man, she's not useless. Not my pumpkin, Dogzilla. Not this cat. A little behind on the donos here. Let me catch up. Sorry, guys. Sanchez, thanks for the $2 donation. It says money for O-line, draft for everything else. Again, I'm 100% with you, man. Let's go. I have no problems with that. You put your money in the line. You get this line set up to where you walk into the draft not having to do anything on your offensive line. And then what do you really need at that point in the draft, like truly badly need? And you're probably signing Jones at this point if you're doing that kind of move. So you need a nose tackle, corner, receiver, tight end, maybe 2. That's 5 positions. What else do you really maybe need? Maybe another edge. Safety, maybe another lineman. It's 8 picks. We got 9 picks on the books as it stands. So you're freed up you can still address all that stuff if you want to address it wherever you want to address it in the draft. But yeah, you'd free yourself up in that way to be able to do that. I don't see why you couldn't do that. And I'm okay if they take that approach too, Sanchez, because I have a lot of faith in the fact that if you build this line up and you get this line back, a lot of things will improve with that, making less of the requirement for all of those parts and pieces of the team to be fulfilled across the board in full with depth to make that happen. I really have faith that could be the case, especially if you could double dip with 2 really good offensive linemen in free agency. I'd love to see the approach, man. Thanks for the dono. Jeffrey, thanks for the $2 donation. Says, can you imagine getting Trey Smith and Drew Dahlman? Oh, it would be wonderful. And it's like, from John's perspective, again, yes, fans already typically are going to like the big signings in free agency you make, but you talk about 2 signings that, number one, first makes sense. You're not signing for some past level of play that the player will never get back to. These are both still very young players entering into their prime. But then that you're going to have people applauding you on their feet, just whistling, going, John, yes, you got it, man. You finally figured it out, brother. You finally got it. Like, how often you get to make signings like that that'll be just universally praised for what you did, even if it went wrong. If Trey Smith went wrong, if Drew Dahlman went wrong, even if they went wrong, nobody's looking back in retrospect because everyone would have attested to the fact that we wanted you to make those moves. We were telling you to make those moves. We were begging you to make those moves. To me, it lines up here for him to try to do that. Now, he's got to compete with a lot of other people's dollars on that, which I'm sure is really going to make it hard for him to make those deals work. But just give it a try at least. Run it up. It's a different strategy than anything else you've been running up in recent years. And the strategy you have been running in recent years haven't been working particularly well. So why not? Why not? But yeah, you can only imagine what that would do for the excitement of this fan base if you're able to bring those two guys in and really jumpstart this thing in a major way. And hard to see any other cumulative moves that you could make in the money that you would spend on those guys that would increase this team up over that, right? What that would equal out to and the other moves that would go with it, likely to go with it in what you would do in the draft. Hard to see how you build up a better team going different routes through this upcoming season to me. Sanchez, thanks for another $2 donation, Sanchez. I appreciate all the donos. What opens up if we move Abe to guard? What opens up? I mean, I don't know if there's a lot that opens up necessarily, Sanchez, because you now need a right tackle. So you've got Mike Jarrell, I think, is going to be more of a left tackle, swing tackle type. I don't think he's a starter necessarily where he's at right now or ready to go as a starter. So you move him to guard, but now you have a need for a right tackle. And then you go and probably take a right tackle very early on in the draft, if not the first round, then the second round. It's definitely something that's mentioned quite a bit. Sanchez is a possibility from some folks. I'm a little bit unsure on it, why it's kind of such a hot to trot idea from my perspective on this, because number one, Abe is 6'6", and 6'6" guys can work inside. They certainly can, but it's not necessarily the most natural of transitions to make, I would say, number one. And if I make that transition, number two, I would typically want to make that right tackle to guard transition as the guy is entering into the league. So when he goes from being a college player to pro, now I move you into guard. I wouldn't wait for 3 years and then for the first time, then move that guy into guard and then thinking I'm going to get really good play out of that guy to guard. And then the third part of it for me, I guess, Sanchez, is that he's playing really good for you at right tackle. Abraham Lucas has been the best right tackle for this team going back to Sean Locklear in 2005. Why would we want to move, kind of him then to guard when we've gotten that performance, and that performance has been so hard to find? So you're not alone. There's a lot of people that mention it, but that's just kind of the part that befuddles me on it, is I don't understand the thinking behind it, why we'd want to do this now with him, why it would work with him necessarily. He plays tackle position a little high in his pass sets, not in a bad way. You don't have to play with as much low base when you're working off a tackle position. But it does take into account for me when I think about the guy then sliding into guard and having to win the leverage war in there at 6'6", who's not maybe the most natural of benders. Maybe it's something that can work, and I'm not being imaginative enough with it on it, but I just don't have a lot of track record with these kind of players in this position and seeing teams do that this kind of late in their career. They usually would start to try to make that transition much earlier if they thought that was something the player was capable of, or that was a better position for him being guard than tackle. We'll see though. I would say it's probably a lot harder to find the good quality right tackles in this draft than it is to find the guards as well in this, Sanchez, where Simmons and Campbell are going to be off the board. Arante Ursay, if we don't take him past 18, he's probably off the board. Armand Mabo is probably done in the first round in the 20s. So, you've got your right tackle options at that point. If you move Lucas into guard, are going to be like Marcus Mbao in the second round, maybe. And then Hall and Pierce who's a left tackle out of Rutgers, who's a former walk-in, who's like 6'7". Maybe you can move him to right tackle, or Emory Jones, LSU 3rd round, but like none of those guys to me are as good as Abraham Lucas, a right tackle then. And it's a lot easier to find those guards more into this draft, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, that can be pretty good guards than, kind of doing the inverse where you keep Lucas a tackle and then just draft those guys pure guards, so to speak. But again, it's tossed about a lot. I do hear a lot of folks mentioning it still quite a bit. Real Cheese has been a member of the Hawks Nest for 4 months. Thank you for that, Real Cheese. He says, bring back Lakin as a depth backup vet teacher. Probably going to be hard to do that. I would estimate that you're probably going to go grab yourself you're going to get a left guard from somewhere, Tyler Booker or Trey Smith or whatever. You're going to get a left guard. You're probably going to go get a right guard somewhere too as well, that you know what you're getting in that guard. And then you're going to keep probably LeMay and Bradford on the roster, Oluwatimi, Haynes on the roster. I don't know if there'll be necessarily the spots or the hole there for Lakin on that at that point, Real Cheese. I guess it's a possibility. I think he has played, he played in the Niners system back in the days, so he's played in this system. I think that the tough part is that when you do need that mobility now, he is a guy that's lost a couple of steps as well. So that if I have to call upon him, I don't know if he can execute the wide zone stuff of this scheme anymore consistently. And he's going to struggle to get to those blocks. But he does have familiarity going back to the Niners within the system. Jeffrey Thistle, thank you for the $5 donation. He says, can you imagine if we got Trey Smith and Drew Dahlman in free agency and traded 3 firsts and Geno for Joe Burrow? Best offseason ever? That would be the best offseason ever. Yeah. And second place would be, second place is the year we got Bennett and Averill for about $2.50 at the end of free agency. That was an awesome, that was the Percy Harvin offseason too, right? Where you started with Percy and then I think you ended with, I might be wrong on this, but I think I'm right. You started with Percy on the trade front for a first rounder and you finished with the $2.50 McDonald's value meals that you had to spend for 1 year of Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill. That one was a pretty good offseason. But that would probably supersede it. That would probably supersede it. And you want to talk about a shot in the arm to the fan base as far as electricity goes, bringing in a guy like Burrow and then putting that kind of offensive line in front of him. That'd be amazing. That would be absolutely, utterly amazing. I'd probably be streaming 24/7 every day. Every freaking day. I'd love to see it, Jeffrey. At the very least, those first 2 options, make a hard run at both. Double dip on both. I don't think that we're coming back a year or 2 from now if we got them both saying, man, we really regret signing that Trey Smith and Drew Dahlman in free agency. That was where everything went wrong. I think quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. Football will reward you for being aggressive. It can bite you in the butt too, but it can reward you like hell in this modern day for that team that's willing to pivot, willing to drive just a little bit harder forward. If it's being done especially intelligently. You're just firing shots in the dark like Denver did a couple of years ago where they really wanted Aaron Rodgers and then they're going to hire the coach that Aaron likes and then, that didn't work. We got to pivot. Russell, or the New York Jets and how they go about it. You want to be a little bit, have a plan, a certainty, all that stuff in place before you make these aggressive kind of roles, but make them. It will reward it. Reward the Rams a couple of years ago for doing it. It's the new way. John Naylor, thank you for the $5 donation. Brando, with the faithful pumpkin riding shotgun, traveling behind enemy lines to bring Hawk fans good football. Free agent intel. That's right. She always knows when I'm live. Yeah, you're always with me on this. Yeah, you're my Chewbacca. You kind of sound like Chewbacca. Give me a She's like, I'm not your Chewbacca. Stop calling me Chewbacca. I mean, you do have the coloring. Chewbacca's a perfectly good character to be called. No, you're not more like Han Solo. You're more Chewbacca. Just look at the size of you. You're the Bigfoot of cats. But thank you, John. She's always here, man. And whether I'm here with you guys going live or whether I'm up over on the behind me lines, like you say, man, she's always shotgun. She's always a shotgun, and she's always a good girl. Yeah. Always a good girl and always needing a lot of loves. Yeah. Dogzilla, thank you for the $2 donation. It says, what's your cat's weight, arm reach, and hand size? Ooh. That's a good question. Weight is, she's weighty. She's probably cracked 3.0. I ain't gonna lie. I get shamed every time I take her to the vet. Well, isn't she a big girl? I mean, she's hungry. I bet she is. Are we feeding her a little bit too much? I mean, look at the face, you know? I understand, but she's a big one, huh? Yeah. So she's got a little extra. She's definitely a lineman. She's definitely guard. She's rocking guard, you know? Yeah, you're a guard. But she could pull out in space. She could climb to the second level, Dogzilla. Yeah. She's light on her feet. As far as reach, pretty good reach. 33.5 inches on the arm length. Yeah. We got little tiny hands though. You know, she makes little baby biscuits. Got the little baby biscuits going. Thank you, Dogzilla. Dwyer, thanks for the $5 donation, man, and I appreciate you as well as being a member of the channel. Which free agents do you think John Schneider is most likely to sign based on needs, expected amount, John's tendencies? John tendencies is the most important part of that. Given John's tendencies, I would say that the likely signings would be, I think an Austin Hooper at two years, $10 million. A Tier Tart kind of guy at 3 years, $17 million. And then 2 offensive linemen, Will Hernandez and Dalton Risner. The Riz. Something like that. You know, Will Hernandez, Aaron Banks. You know, O'Dwyer. Kind of something like that. Where it's 2 of the lower end signing points. You're not giving up a lot of money. You go get the tight end on the other end of it. And you can see the expected amounts I have here for these guys. So 3 years, $24 million for Banks. And then with Risner, 3 years, $18 million. 2 years, $10 million for Hooper. And then Hernandez would be a 3 year, $17 million. So you can see that this would be where he kind of, and this would be John from his standpoint, if he signed these kind of linemen, where he'd be going like, look, I stepped outside of my tendencies. You know, I really elevated this offseason because I didn't just give out the 1 year, $3 million on the 33-year-old guy. I actually went for guys they're still in their 20s. Like, yeah, you did, kind of. So I'd say these would be more, those signings would be more along the line of it. A Will Hernandez and, you know, maybe more like, you know, Will Hernandez, Aaron Banks, Hooper, something like that. That's kind of the combination he's gone to in the past. That's definitely where I think he's probably likely to be on it. I do think he does double dip in free agency, O'Dwyer, when it comes to offensive line and interior offensive line specifically, / might even triple down, because there is needed center. There is needed both guard positions. You do have a needed backup tackle. And that to me does maybe make him push to do this, because the one thing I can say with John is, though he is at times very likely to go for these value-based signings in free agency, he also approaches free agency to make sure that he has taken care of everything on the team leading up to the draft. That at least on paper, everything is handled and that there's nothing that he has to reach for need in the draft. He can run the board by pure value-based model. I think this is part of what's kind of the reason they do all these 1 year deals too, is that you sign a couple of 3 year deals, or you eat all the money up to 1 or 2 players here instead of 4 or 5 players. And now I am going to have some pull in this draft to reaching for need because I couldn't quite take care of everything in free agency. And I get that part of the pull to him on it. I think that's a part of the equation here. Maybe it drives it a little bit too much. So I would say to that point, O'Dwyer, but those would be the kind of signings I think that you would probably expect him to make, given his kind of history on that. John Naylor says, what's Pumpkin's 40 time and split? Well, as a younger girl, she could move, but That extra 10 pounds of weight she's got right now, she's big backed. You know what I mean? She's a big back girl. You are a big back girl. You know you are. Well, you like the salmon and you eat all the time. That's going to make you big backed. It's okay. They still love you just as much. There's just more fur and there's just more of you. Yeah. Post Evanescence says, 2 Byron Murphys on defense. Send it. Just a matter of all the confusion we can cause. That alone. I like Byron. He's good. He's really good. Few more Seahawks. Thanks for the $2 donation. Says, I miss the old Pop-Tarts. Remember how good they were. I know, man. They've messed up everything now. It's like that to me with chocolate. Chocolate used to taste so much better. Now it's all got that soy lectin thing going on, and it just tastes differently. It tastes manufactured. It tastes like, a collection of chemicals rather than like the pure chocolate of old. And everything's got that sort of thing to it now where it's like, it kind of tastes like what a Pop-Tart used to taste like. It's like an alt dimension Pop-Tart. Food sucks now. It's so bad. It's all poison and it doesn't even taste, doesn't even taste good tasting poison. Brian, I think EJ does get signed here. That's the first order of business, I think, that's going to come down the line here. Well, not the first order. The Geno thing is going to come down, DK thing, and then EJ is the next. Might have to wait a bit on it, though, because like these other in-house contracts we've had coming down the wire, both, I think with both Fant and Leonard Williams, it was one where you got right up into the precipice of free agency before the deals got done. Will Freeze. I don't know a lot about him, but that's a name I could have included. I think that's an offensive lineman, right, Robbie? John, I think Pumpkin's got she could do a 40 and she's got a 3.940. I think she's a sub 3. Alan Carroll, I knew the new scheme should help the O-line a lot, hopefully. It will. Yeah, it will, Alan. And if it's one that does help them, the last scheme was a deficiency as far as how much it was helping the players in that respect. As else as our new O-line coach has a lot of experience moving players around on the offensive line. He's experienced, unlike Grubb's crew he brought with college. It's true. You know what you're getting with this guy. He's going to know how to train these guys up. I don't think we're going to look at this offensive line going into next year going, man, there's more talent on this than they're getting out of them on the field. And you'll be on the other end of it, I think. It's on John to improve the talent, but it should be a much better job of maximizing that talent. And there's such a big room for improvement there on that right now from where it's been. Brian says trading 3 first before more step back and then sign those guys moving forward. I don't know, man. I can't see a downside on it, Brian, to that. To get a guy like Joe Burrow, you're not going to get anywhere close to a quarterback of that caliber over the next 3 drafts unless you have a horribly captastic season. And that's unlikely to happen, given, especially Brian, that we've never had a talent of Burrow's type in here as a Seahawks quarterback ever in our history. Maybe you can get Russell for a couple of years in there. So it also is a bit of like, look, if you take care of those 2 interior offensive line positions with a Drew Dahlman and a Trey Smith, and you go get a Burrow, it's not a team with a whole hell of a lot of holes moving into the future. You've built up this base with players that you believe in at that point that should be part of that foundation going forward. And while it's going to hurt to lose 3 first rounders at that point, that still is You're not in a rebuild mode at that point. You're in a full elite contending mode, and that's the move a team should be making if they're going to be thinking of themselves as a contender. I always ask teams to know thyself. Well, that would be a great representation of knowing thyself. Of, hey, we're going to make these moves. We're going to make this move because we are trying to get here, and we're going to get there. We're not getting here to be stuck in purgatory. We're getting here to become a contender. That's the goal. And I can't see a downside on that end of it if they were able to pull that kind of move off. It would hurt, but I don't see ultimately it's a plus move all the way down the line. Brian, he says Burrow is going nowhere. He's a homeboy, and so he's a lifer at Cincinnati. Could very well be the case, Brian. I will say. A lot of people were telling me the same thing when it came to Myles Garrett midseason when I was bringing up to people in my chat. And Brian, they'll attest to it here, even that were in the chat during people when I brought this up midseason saying, man, Myles Garrett might be available here into this offseason. Would you guys want to be going in on it? And I got a lot of people at that time. And this happened to me a lot in the past too, Brian. It's kind of always coming a meme on this channel at times where I'll bring something up and people go, man, there's no way that could happen. That's just, this is where this is going to be. This is where, and then it just kind of can then come up and happen. And this stuff is not always easy to see coming on that, but then sometimes you can kind of feel something like the Garrett thing. You can kind of feel something starting to swirl a little bit there, even if it wasn't just like direct quotes or, the player coming out outright and being like, I want out of this, just a general, feeling you were kind of getting. But we'll see. We'll see on that. I will say, Brian, it's going to be a tough sell job on the Burrow thing when you lose Hendrickson, you're going to lose B.J. Hill. This is after in recent years losing DJ Reader and losing Jesse Bates from your secondary. And then T. Higgins is going to go in free agency. And then they're going to probably lose Jamar Chase. And then you're going to go back to Joe and you're going to say, hey, Joe, at 29, you're going to go through a rebuild, okay? Because, you're from the area. Does Joe want to sign up for that? For a guy that I think probably wants to value winning and maybe I'm wrong on this, but it just seems like something that could also start to kind of shake up a bit there too. If not this year, at least in the next year. Especially because if they let go of those guys, they're not in for a good year going into next year. Alpha B, do you think Olu is good enough to start in the Shanahan scheme? They demand a ton from their centers in terms of line adjustments, calls, and just generally really good play. And if not, then who? He's got the goods to do it in general terms, yeah. He's not as necessarily as athletic as I think Kubiak might look for if he's scouting guys and looking for some base athleticism in place. Olu team is kind of a gamer when it comes to natural physical gifts, sort of faster on a football field than he would be on a track. But I don't think that he's embedded as your starter of the future there. I think he's functional. I would say Alpha and Olu, functional. But the position probably would like to have a little bit more talent from it, all things being equal. I think Olu could probably handle the line call stuff, but especially going into now year 3. But I would just be worried about if he's... I think the team would look for a little bit more oomph from the position. Jeffrey says, well, Luka did get traded to the Lakers for peanuts. Bad teams make bad trades. They do. They do. John Naylor, thank you for the $2 donation. Bobo versus Pumpkin in the 40. Can we put salmon at the end of the finish line, John? With a little bit of, and then can I use like a little fan where I blow the salmon scent down to Pumpkin? Then it's a guaranteed her. I think she could probably beat Bobo with a stuffy in her mouth. I'm all day on Pumpkin on that one. That's how trying to turn 4 quarters into a dollar bill. Exactly. Gabe Lewis, how realistic is a trade DK for Garrett Wilson? I don't think I would see that being a possibility. I mean, it just feels kind of like a lateral kind of thing for both organizations. Not sure how interested DK would be to go to New York into that environment either there, Gabe. Because New York's going to want to sign him to a contract extension if they bring him in, if they're going to give up, Wilson on that. So the basic value might be equivalent, but I don't know if it would really make sense on both teams' fronts to do it. I'm sorry you didn't get a notification, hand grenade. We'll be coming back on Friday at 12 as well with a show. So just letting you guys know that in advance. If you don't get the notification on that one, make sure to check in. You mad, bro? Hawks Nest, what do you think about trading this year's first and next year's first and Nwosu for Garrett? In the process, pick up Smith in free agency. Thank you for your dedication, bro. Well, it's my pleasure, man. My pleasure. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you for doing that. And I'm okay with it. I've really been it's like the first step to the second step for me. And the first step was evaluation this offseason. And I mean this from the team's perspective and what I want the team to do, you mad, bro. I want the team to look at it and understand that they're walking up to a road and that it's a fork in the road. It is not a road with 4 different entrances. You're not getting on a freaking on-ramp on the highway. You've got a fork in the road. 2 decisions face you, John. One decision is you take the one step back, you patiently build this up, you clear out the last of the bad money from the back prior era, you get yourself to 26 and 27 where you got as much cap space as anywhere else, you move yourself into a better year where you can go get your quarterback in the draft, where there's more talent in the draft, go get that QB, get all that positioned. That's road 1. That's a road, you mad bro, that not a lot of fans really want. People have been waiting for 10 freaking years. They're tired of waiting. They're tired of steps backs. They want to do nothing but go forward. So I'm good with that too. You want to go the other path. The other road is you want to contend. This whole stuff we've been going on with purgatory and just like, well, we'll back our way into the playoffs if Detroit can beat Green Bay at home on the road on the last game of the season. That does nothing for me. Can I just say that does nothing for me? Especially when it means the price of that means I'm stuck there for longer and longer and longer and longer and longer. And that's where we reside, folks. That's where we're at. And so if you want to take this other path, you want to take the right fork. I'm thumbs up. I'm 2 thumbs up. I'm big smiley face guy. I'm like, yeah, John, do it. But take that road. Don't go down that road for a little while and then just sort of pivot back off and go, ooh, this is a little too much. This is a little too much. Got to go back this way over here. So if you want to choose, and I know I'm prefacing a lot of this, you mad bro, to your question, but if you want to be a contender, then take that road and go. And what would that road mean? Would it mean signing a Trey Smith? You better believe it. Would it mean being super aggressive with the Myles Garrett type trade if that's on the board? You better believe it. But the goal is then to drive to a true contending state, to be to a contending state that I'm talking about where it's not, you're the Minnesota Vikings next year of the NFL. I'm not talking about that kind of contender, right? Because we saw what happened with that kind of contender the second they got in the first round of the playoffs, didn't we? We saw what happened to that kind of contender right off the jump, didn't we? I'm talking about the type of contender that the NFL landscape can look around and they can say, hey, here's the 5-6 teams that really do got a chance to go win the Super Bowl next year. Because 2 of the teams in the Super Bowl right now competing it out this Sunday were 2 of the teams that you would have thought would have been as part of that mix coming into this season. You don't have to like do math or have a big imagination to be these kind of contending teams. Yes, there are teams that get in and out of the playoffs every year and that fluctuates. There's like 6 in and 6 out every year. But the contenders are known. They're known. There's no guesswork involved. And we are not in a place right now where we're anywhere close to that being the case with regards to this team right now, even with 10 wins last year. So if you want to be at a contending state, if really the goal here is to contend for Super Bowls and not to back our way into the playoffs, you mad bro, then it's aggressive moves down the line to get there. Because as much progress as we made last year, we still have a long way to go if we want to get to being a contending team. So to me, it's got to be one of the two. And maybe I've got a little bit of a small-minded approach to this versus maybe somehow the rest of you might be thinking in regards to this, that no, there are multiple roads on this. I just don't think so. especially given the track record of the last 10 years, especially given the fact that I think in John's case right now, the clock's got to start to be ticking here from Jody's perspective, doesn't it? A little bit. I'm not talking about seat warming up beneath him, but it's got to start to be where Jody's over there going, John, the Jacksonville Jaguars have more playoff wins than us since 2016. John. When does the sense of urgency start to kick in there, you know? And I say that as a guy completely okay with the step back, but then you tell the fans that we are taking that step back too if you take that road. But take more of a certain path. Stop taking this middle, sitting on the fence post, dilly-dallying around. It ain't accomplishing anything. SL, I'd like to draft another running back as an insurance policy for K9, especially with his extension coming up. It's possible, SL, and this is such a deep draft. The running backs that you get into 5th, 6th, 7th round. We go back to value-based board. From John's perspective, could very well find himself there in that 5th, 6th round, and the running back is the highest guy that he's got at the top of his list. I don't think you're taking a guy early, but I certainly think that the value could be there later on. Brian says, God, 30 pounds? Oh, yeah, she's a left guard. Sign her up. She'd be good. She's ferocious, too. She's ferocious, man. Yeah, she's a big girl. John Willow, what do you think? Mac Jones if they move on from Geno? I'm okay with it on a year because you bring him in and he dukes it out with Sam Howell. I mean, you're really kind of at that point doing that road that I just talked about, which again, I'm okay with. I know some fans would be against this, but I'm not one of those fans. I'm okay with either of these two roads. I just want you to really pick one. So if you take we're going to take the step back, we're going to clear the bad cap space, we're going to get this offensive line put in place before we go get the quarterback of the future, then I'm okay with Mac Jones. But there's any number of those quarterbacks, John Willow, that would be on the market like Mac, former first Zach Wilson, former first round guy, never able to quite tap into the they'd all be about equivalent to me. Where you bring any of those guys in, they're sort of penny stocks where they may pay off, but they're much more likely to not be particularly good. And you're just trying to get through the season to get to next to really then drive this much harder and be in a position to drive it much harder to a contending state. Jeffrey says the Rizzler. Emily's with it. She says, Trey Smith, we can afford him. We can afford him, Emily. We absolutely can. I know that he's going to cost a lot as far as his per year basis goes, but the first year of his cap hit's going to cost about $6 million on a new deal. So you can absolutely get that done. Brian says, Brandon, cap money aside, free agents DJ Reed, Chase Young, James Daniel, and Juwan Johnson could be targets. I wasn't tremendously impressed with James Daniels in doing the research on this, Brian, for the free agent deal. I did consider putting him on my top 20, but I just didn't get quite a lot from him in his play to really drive that, in my opinion. DJ Reed's a guy I've thought about as well. I think that you could put him very much in the same kind of place of a Byron Murphy type. He'll cost less than Byron Murphy would, the corner that's on the free agent market from the Vikings. Reed would be a little bit less expensive because he's a little bit older, but you're still spending pretty high cost to bring DJ in. But he's been really good for the Jets. I mean, that was a great signing for them. They're very happy with the money that they gave him. Chase Young is a guy that just seems like he picks his moments in games to me. Never is going to realize the talent that he once was. He's had a couple moments like the Niners last year where they traded for him at the trade deadline and he had an opportunity to show you that, okay, now that I play for a contender, I'm really going to show you my best version of me. I'm going to really light the world on fire. And you didn't get that from him. They couldn't move on from him fast enough. Juwan Johnson's an interesting tight end for the Saints last year. Familiarity would be the big driving force, I think, there. He didn't do anything amazing for the Saints last year from the tight end position, but he was fine. He's athletic. He's a good pass catcher. You know, he could maybe fit the role, Brian, of Noah Fant if you let him go and cut him. What's up, Wilbert? It's good to see you, man. Brian Kennecott chiming in to hang with the #1 Seahawks content creator and his nestings. Go Hawks. Go Hawks, man. What's up, Brian? It's good to see you, brother. Jordan Copper says there's also another Kobe Bryant in the draft. We could have 2 Byron Murphys and 2 Kobe Bryants. Who says no? And you're right, Jordan. That's the spelling on it. It's Kobe with 2 E's. It's kind of interesting. The moms on both of them named their kids kind of after Kobe Bryant, but they sort of changed one letter of the name like Kobe did, and then that Kobe did. SL Hazard Burrow to Seattle would be like Luka to the Lakers. Legendary. It's possibility knowing how stingy the Bengals ownership is. Yeah, this is where I get the people saying that Joe is from Ohio. A lot less of a reason to leave. It is a move that I'm kind of doing where I'm sort of doing some advanced stuff as far as like, look, why would they let him go? But it's again this offseason that they're walking into where that's so much, they're going to lose so much talent drain this offseason are the Bengals. And they don't have the money to keep these guys in. That's the thing with this team is it's just, they are as poor as, I know we've been able to benefit from having Allen in that model here, and even with Jody still spending a lot of money, but there's a lot of teams in the sport that just don't have a lot of money. And they're not cash rich, and that you sign $200 million contract. I mean, literally just to get the Burrow deal done, they had to do some advertisement signing name rights deal in the stadium or something just to get enough extra cash to get the Burrow deal done. And I do wonder with Burrow being a driving force in the background of this, if he would be a guy, SL, that's just going to be happy with going through a rebuild at this age of his career. Okay, we're going to go back next year. You're going to need to be Superman again. The line's going to be like, we're going to be rebuilding the defense. You're not going to have any real receivers to throw to anymore. You know, Andre Isilvos, he's going to be your #1 guy now. Who? AI says that fat cat is a 5'0" flat 40. She's big, but she can move, okay? She's like that Shaq thing where it's like something that big shouldn't be moving like that, but she can. You'd be surprised, man. She's fierce. SL said they're letting T. Higgins walk. I know the Bengals owners are sick thinking about having to pay both Burrow and Chase. Higgins is gone. He was a franchise tag this year. They can't afford to franchise him 2 years in a row. And Hendrickson, let's also remember that. He's going too. One of your best edge rushers in the sport. Bye-bye. That's Trey Hill, one of their best defensive tackles. Bye-bye. It's hard. It's tough. They draft and develop really well out there in Cincinnati, but that's hard to overcome that. Brian E says, if you run into a fork in the road, take it. Blue Hawks says, I hope the Pac-12 can survive. It's going to be hard. College football's in such a weird place right now, man. It's in such a weird, wonky place. Thank you, Wilbert. It's facts, Brandon. Great show. Appreciate you. Blue Hawks 206. Seattle has to steal other people's quarterback to get a decent one. Wilson being the only exception, but he had a lot of help. It's true, man. It's been just a freaking issue in this team's craw for just years. And we've had the one time really with Rick Meyer picking in the top 3 to go get that guy in a year where there was 2 quarterbacks where even if Seattle wasn't picking #2 overall, any team they're picking in our #2 slot would have taken Rick Meyer. It was very much a consensus between him and Bledsoe in that draft as far as the way the 1-2 order should go. It's like the Ryan Leaf, Peyton Manning, a draft in certain ways. And so, you had your one chance and it just never worked out with him. I mean, it just didn't. And yeah, it's been kind of somewhat of a wasteland otherwise. Would love to draft one, Blue Hawk. I really would. We just never seem to be in a position to do so. Brian says, we're in purgatory. We'll be in hell if Pete gets to dance before we do. If he gets to the dance before we do. Yeah, you talk about some angry Hawk fans. Oh my God, my chat would be blowing up with the people that I've already got a couple of people that pop in, Brian, that are like, Pete got fired due to ageism. He should sue. I get that a couple times a stream. Usually a guy pops in. My guy rolling. Blue Hawk says it doesn't matter if you get a running back in the first round. If he gets hit less than 1 second, he can't do anything. True. SL, I'm willing to lose every game next year and have the Manning kid for the following 20 years. But that's a tough pill to swallow for most. It is a tough one. Yeah, that gets stuck right here in the gullet. Oh, you try to do that right there, that one. But it would be fun to be able to bring in a kid like that. I mean, knowing you got that as your building block piece. I mean, some team is going to be very excited next season. The New York Giants or the New Orleans Saints or the Miami Dolphins. I mean, they're going to be very excited next year if you get what I'm saying there, Blue Hawk. Or not Blue Hawk, SL. O'Dwyer, thank you for the $5 donation, O'Dwyer. Out of 10, how confident are you that the O-line will be at least average in the next 3 years, the new coaching staff, and pressure to change on John Schneider? It's good. I'm glad you put the question at average, O'Dwyer, because I'd have a lot harder time answering this with confidence if you're talking that they'll be like a top 10 offensive line. I have a 9 out of 10 confidence on this one. I'd call it a 93%. So a strong, almost an A level of confidence in regards to this being done. And there's a couple of reasons for it, O'Dwyer. Number one, a lot of the driver of the lack of offensive line throughout most of John's time here has been, I'm paying my quarterback. I have a head coach who wants me to invest all of his money into the defense. I want to still get my skill position players. My coach still wants a good running back. I don't have anything left over for the offensive line. That's kind of the way that worked out through most of the time here. I know it hasn't recently on that, but that's been most of his time. Now I think he's faced in a moment where he's kind of maintained that even after Carroll left last year and his approach. And he's now been really burned by it as bad as ever throughout his whole time here. And there's been years where you've been partially burned, first degree, second degree, third degree burns this year, where O'Dwyer, you really like, look, we've been warning for years, and you've been like, nah, I get by on it. I'm getting by on it. I'm getting by. It's like the guy out there speeding. He's like, they never catch me. They never catch me speeding. I always just get to work faster. And then that guy gets popped for like 4 tickets in a 6-month span. And you're like, all right, dude, I guess they're now putting speed traps in place on that run now. And now you got to start going the speed limit, don't you? Yeah, I got those tickets. John just got the equivalency of 4 tickets in a 1 season span when it comes to this offensive line, O'Dwyer. How can that not drive him now to hammer the offensive line? And my thinking with this line is that you can understand and pull the thread back as to why it's not good, because you spent as less of money on this offensive line this past season as anybody in the NFL. You spend as less of money on this offensive line as anybody in the NFL for the last probably 10 years. You don't spend money in free agency. You don't trade for guys. The results we've gotten from this offensive line are not surprising. They're understandable. This is what happens when you go bare minimum. This is what you can come to expect. I think what happened is that it's probably, O'Dwyer, a little bit of the upshot of what we got from what Grubb gave us, because what Grubb's system did is it just took this failing point, and rather than it sort of putting some rebar in there and some cement to kind of close up the hole, it ripped all that stuff out and just blew open the hole even bigger to make it even more of a spotlight on the situation. So maybe the one plus with the whole Grubb thing that comes out of this, where you're like, yeah, it sucks, but it did at least showed the world and John and the Pacific Northwest and all 12 fans, this thing is awful. And so he's got to deal with it at this point. And the only last point I'll say on this, O'Dwyer, is because if he doesn't now, it's not merely that he gets to do what he's done the last 10 years of, I'm going to avoid the offensive line in 26, and I'll avoid the offensive line in 2017, and I'll avoid the offensive line in 18, and I'll avoid the offensive line in 19, and I'll avoid the offensive line in 20. Nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. I got my job. We're not winning the playoffs, but I'm keeping my job. I'm keeping my job. 21, still going to annoy the offensive line. 22, still going to annoy the offensive line. Keeping my job. Keeping my job. Keeping my job. 23, still going to avoid the offensive line. And now we've got the point where people are pulling out the pitchforks and the torches and they're saying we've had enough. And so that final point I'm saying on this is that I have this confidence because if he doesn't, he's going to get fired over this. This is going to be the thing on top of, I'm sure, there's already, with the guy being there for 14 years, and there's a variety of different decisions that John already has been a part of that could easily be enough of a spot from the ownership standpoint to say, okay, we think you've lost the magic here. This would be the exclamation to that. This would be the shining example of John in his failures. If you're going to go into this future now and continue to short sell this thing, continue to play with this blind spot. And at that point, I don't see how he keeps his job unless Jody's just completely checked out of the process and she's just biding her time till the sale. She just wants to wait on the sale as long as possible because every year she gets a little bit more money in her pocket. Who knows on that whole situation of the dynamics of that exactly? I don't think it's that way. I don't. This is why I have that confidence though, Dwyer, because I think Jody would at that point be like, look, I'm hearing from friends that don't even like football that you can't build an offensive line, John. Conversations like that. And I think he's got to start to be hearing that from every different angle around him. And I just think that if he doesn't, it's going to cost him his job. And there's been no positional group that he has been able or potential of ignoring, even including the quarterback position, which is so important for so many people. There's not been any position in his time as general manager, as a Seahawks GM, that he would have ignored and gotten any of the kind of blowback he's going to get if he does that same approach again this offseason to this offensive line. I mean, the bullet is chambered, the drawn back, pulling back the deal, and its finger is right there on the old trigger. So, if he wants to go that direction and basically commit, career suicide here a little bit with this one, he can do it, I guess. But that gives me the confidence with Dwyer. I just don't think he's been forced and pressed to it now where it's impossible for him to ignore it. Impossible. Kansas City Chiefs fan from Lasanton, Tasmania. Ooh, we got a Tasmania folk out here. Let's go. What's up, Kansas City Chiefs fan from Tasmania? Appreciate you. We got a variety of different folks from Australia out here in the house on that side of things. So we got quite a contingent here out there from the south on in here, but welcome aboard. Appreciate you jumping and becoming part of the Hawks Nest. Wilbur Knight, Arch is a stud, man. There's no doubt about that. He's going to be probably a very good player. Hand Grenade, you two haven't been notifying me when B goes live, and I'm hitting the reminder thing also. Yeah, it could be a little weird. I think I did lower down the time today on the start time from 5 to 4 because I wanted to get something going a little bit later on this evening. So it might have been I messed up the notes on this one, Hand Grenade. But I'll try to get them in. I think the key to is me making sure I get them in a good full 24 hours beforehand because YouTube's a little slow on the ball with that. And I'll try to do that for Friday's show. I'll try to get that posted up tonight, maybe after this show, so that thing gets locked in there a little bit more. But we will be on Friday going up at 12 o'clock. So if you're around on Friday or anybody's around Friday, if you don't get your notification, just check YouTube at that point because I will be live at 12 on Friday too as well. And Kansas City Chiefs fans, all are welcome in here. We're just really respectful here above all else, of course. That's what we lead with. We love good football discussion in this house, and that's the only thing. That's basically our only rule on this one in this place. But you're welcome in. We love all good football talk, too. It doesn't have to be just Seahawks-centric. Phoebe says, I forgot the round table yesterday. I'm so upset. I wrote down jokes for Jesse. John Carmen says, leave the offensive line decisions to John Benton. Probably pretty smart to hear who he wants, right? You definitely want to have him guiding you through that process. And especially to your point there, John, with the given recent track record of John's picks there on the line. Ryan says, they let Van Brown go. I want Juwan Johnson. I'm okay with him. He's interesting. You mad, bro? Hawks Nest. I'm with you, man. I can't imagine how dominant our defense would be with Garrett and Williams. Assuming we keep E. Jones and sign Smith, I believe we'll be a big contender in the NFL. Let's go. Well, I love it, man. I feel the very same way. Hard not to see how you wouldn't be a contender at that point and building one hell of a defense. One hell of a defense. We even mentioned Murphy in there, your two edges you have upcoming around those guys. It would be pretty sick. Post says, you think Burrow to the Hawks would be reignite that home field advantage? Laughing out loud. I would tell you this, you'll have a whole lot less fans selling their tickets. Some of this is a little bit of just the nature of how they sell tickets now. And of course, we've got a lot of the robo ticket buying scalpers out there who are able to get in line and get those season tickets bought and, are looking to reverse them around. It's just an investment for them as much as anything having to do with their fandom. But you would certainly see a lot less of the Buffalo Bills-like situation where it feels like the whole stadium's being taken over by the opposition. I do think that. And that's things people have pointed me to, too, just in reference to when I've asked about why are we losing this home field advantage? And they'll speak about things like The team not being particularly good and what's there to be excited about. And our quarterback's Geno Smith. And so it's something I'm not sure that should be a part of the equation on that, but it is. It is a part of the equation of what fills that stadium or not, is having a guy like that. Wouldn't be the reasons I would necessarily want him to come here. Mine more would be purely for what he brings to the field, but it'd be nice that he also brings that too. Brian's is rolling with the ageism stuff's crazy, funny. It is. He's committed to it, man. You got to be impressed with it. I always felt the same thing about the Russell Wilson folks too. They had some diehards out there in the Twitter sphere. Like every time you hear anybody speak anything about Russell, like bam, they're there every time. Like, man, you're riding. You're riding. Hawks goal. If Pete wins the conference next year, we know the weak link is Schneider. Oh, if Pete can win the conference next year, definitely. Yeah, I'd probably be an indicator if he could pull that out with that Raider team. And like he's inheriting a stacked team out there. Zombie Central. I know this isn't really the stream for it, but have you looked into that center prospect I told you about, Cooper Mays? Oh no, man. These are always on these streams now. They're always going to be, as we move into the draft, these are all streams for talking about prospects, man. So we can always talk about these guys. 100%. I did take a look at Mays. Here we go. I did have a chance to take a look at him. Bringing up my notes here. I have a 4th round. Yeah, I've got a late 4th round grade valuation on Cooper Mays, Tennessee center. Smart, quick, and crafty center who was very quick out of his stance for his position, where some centers have to snap and lean back on long arm hand strikes to secure their blocks. He can snap and drive himself into the chest of the defensive tackle before they can get their hands up. It means even when he doesn't get push, he can still get a little nudge in the right direction post-snap. Extremely comfortable and impressive when moving out in space. He can snap it and become your lead blocker on a pitch play wide. So this is one of the things that's one of the harder things to do from a center position is I snap and then I can pull back around out front. I can be the lead blocker out front after I've snapped the ball. Back in the day in the NFL when I was growing up in the late 80s, there was one guy with the Pittsburgh Steelers that could do this. It was such a cool skill to have. Now more of these guys can do it than ever, but it's still a tough skill. It's still not everybody can do that. He's got these little games he'll play where if he's losing one of his custom close-up blocks, his hands will tighten inside on the defender's chest like he's taking hold of a steering wheel and he'll go and spin him. It's kind of a weird move. So it's just like, he launches into the chest really quickly as he snaps. His whole thing, like I said, is rather than he's going to get you out and he's going to deliver the hand strike after he snaps, he's just trying to get himself into your chest. And then when he's got his hands in there, it's almost like, the referee can't see him because you're body to body. And so he sort of like somehow gets his hands on I don't know what he's doing in there. I mean, he might be twisting the guy's sack for all I can tell. It's all darkness in there. Okay. But he does some twist move and the guy ends up getting flipped over to the ground. I don't know how he does it. But like I said, it's just like he's taking a steering wheel. I don't know. Maybe he's titty twisting. I don't know. Could be that. Right? Could be that he's lifts up the pads and then gets in there and does the little titty twist. I mean, it might. He's fine as a pass protector, but he's best helping out in double teams or picking up a blitzer. He's not as good if you're going to have him take on the nose tackle one-on-one in pass pro. He's going to get walked back and exposed a little bit. If he does get isolated on a defensive tackle, mainly as a pass protector, he can get beat. He's a little better in the run game than that, where he might not get a real great win and really drive that guy off the line of scrimmage, but he'll at least get a stalemate. So he's good in that point. He's missing some of the power you'd like for the position. I do think he's best suited to a zone system with heavy requirements on pulling in space and getting to the second level. So he would be very much a fit to this offense is kind of what I'm saying within that as well, Zombies. And I liked him. I think he's a 4th round guy though, just because there's not necessarily something about him physically that really stands out to drive him up into the top, first 2 days of the draft. But he's part of a collection of guys in the 4th round that are good centers that I would be perfectly happy with as far as competition there at the position with Oluwatimi. Kind of have a similar grade with Jake Majors, Bryce Foster, Cooper Mays, Parker Brailsford of Alabama. All those 4 guys, Zombie Central, are all kind of in about the same place for me. Addicted. Hey, Brandon. Hey, 12. Sorry, I'm late. Did I miss the part of the show where everyone agreed John Schneider will not address adding a quality free agent guard? It's been mentioned a little bit. It's been brought up a bit. Cool Breeze says, can John Schneider be unburdened by what has been? We'll learn this off season, I suppose. We'll get a close-up understanding. Chad Hart says Pumpkin's boss. She is boss, man. Look at her. She's watching over things, half awake, half asleep. All cute. Which is, we'll get another offensive line fullback like my guy Will Tukawafu. Now that's the type of fullback we need. Might just Patrick Ricard. I didn't include him on my list here out of Baltimore, former fullback for them, War Chief. Maybe a guy that they take a look at. I'm just saying. Maybe. Addicted Brandon, you're speaking to the obvious point, but a Tiger can't change his stripes. No soup for you. I mean, no guards for you. It's true. He very well may not this offseason. I'm going to be watching him with a freaking microscope when it comes to this stuff this offseason, and I'm gonna step on his foot the second that we see him do that old ways kind of stuff. I will. So, but man, if he does not do it this offseason, I think John's in some trouble. Or it's crazy to think about Marshawn Lynch running behind a 300-pound fullback. A lot of people forget about Big Wheel. Yeah, he was a big boy. He's a big boy. As Al says, so far Mike McDonald has been a great influence on John. It feels like we're leaving our finesse team days behind. Hopefully we are, and hopefully he is. And I think you're right. I think he is having a bit of that effect on John. So Mike dragged John to watch the O-line drills at the Senior Bowl. We're heading in the right direction. It's funny to think about John being like, I want to go over and watch the receivers. No, John, come on. Guys, they're linemen. They're overdrafted. They're overpaid, Mike. Come on, John. I want to watch Jack Besh and Savion Williams, man. I like receivers, dude. Get over here. Get over here. I'm your boss. Or she says the gun's chambered and each bullet has John's name on it, and there's backups. Wilbur says I would trade Hall, Jones, and Nwosu for Garrett. Well, you probably couldn't do all those guys. You could probably do a Nwosu Hall kind of combo, but they wouldn't want to take Draymond Jones because they're going to want to save some money on the deal coming back to them. And of course, with the Uchenna, he's going to have a little bit of base salary to him, and Draymond will have a pretty big base salary to him. Brian Myers says, nobody wants to hear this, but John has 4 O-linemen from last year's draft that are on the roster. May not do much this year. He may not. I mean, it's possible on it. And it's given his history. You know, he'll go out, given his history here, Brian, and he'll go and he'll sign a couple of veteran, probably interior offensive linemen on low-end contracts, go draft one more guy in the draft, and then go call it good. So that's definitely usually has been his typical way and approach that he goes. Or he's just Scatterbo in the 4th and put him at fullback. It's like John L. Hey, he's fun. He's fun. I'd be shocked if John went that early in the draft. Hand Grenade says, I want John to hammer the O-line to the point where we don't have to worry about it for the next 30 years. Boy, me too, man. It's definitely gotten old from being almost 10 years and talking about it, right? You're like, oh, God, just please this year now. Can we now? Can we now? Warchief Zom, Warchief, are there any free agents that you think John Schneider has to pick up? Or are these all nice additions? Yeah, I would definitely have you go through at the top of the show, Zombie. We went through kind of the top 20 I would look at, and it was a bit of a mixture as far as the list goes. There are guys on there at the top of my free agent board, like a Trey Smith or like a Drew Dahlman, that are going to be more of your high price guys that don't fall in alignment with what John has done in the past, but who would definitely be big time improvements for the team. And I would be huge advocates for. We also included some guys on that list, though, that would be more of the lower end crop of guys that he would typically zero in on. Dalton Risner, Aaron Banks, Brady Christensen, more of the kind of a vet, been around a couple teams, bounced around a little bit. Will Hernandez. These would be more of the moves that they've made, kind of in the past as far as value-based moves, Zombies. But we come back to if John's really really believes that he understands, or not believes, but he's been really led to the light in understanding he's got to do more with this offensive line, that this cannot be a back end, like in contention for league worst offensive line again. And he just hopes that he gets to keep his job in perpetuity. That reason alone, if there's any motivation beyond just wanting to win, just beyond wanting to be great, if you just have even just the bare minimum motivation to want to keep your job, then you've got to cross this particular bridge from John's perspective of it. He has taken it. He's gone as far as he can. He has held it off as far as he can. It's a kid, dude has his homework due, and he's waking up in the morning, and his first class of the day is going to be the first time that homework's due, and he's got about an hour and a half. So he can not do it, but he's going to fail if he don't. That's where we can, and that's part where the discussion's at a bit today, which is completely fair, is to say, well, this, given where John's been in the past and where, yeah, he might not do this. He might not. He might say, this is, I just don't have that in me to do it. I just can't do that. I can't make my peace with it. I don't trust in the value of those guys. I don't trust in that being worthwhile enough. He can take that the same approach again. He will be fired within 2 years if that's the approach. Because this team will never attend or ascend to a contending state. There's no such thing as a contending team with a crap-ass offensive line. That's, especially when you don't even know what the hell you're doing at the quarterback position. So, if he can take this trek, he can stay in this mode. He can decide that he just wants to, knuckle down and hope that eventually this will somehow work. Try, go ahead and try. Go ahead, John. But this ain't 2019 anymore. This ain't 2015 anymore. This ain't 2021 anymore, where you got all this goodwill from the Seattle people in ownership that'll just last forever. And part of that goodwill you've gotten, part of why this is extended so long to you, where you are a general manager for a team that only does have one playoff win since 2017. And what now? I believe the Jaguars, who have more playoff wins than your Seattle Seahawks since 2017, are on what? What are they on? Are they on their third or fourth general manager since then? What are they on? Their third coach since then? Something like that. Third or fourth coach since then as well. So you've been given a lot of time here on this one. And unless we have an ownership group that just doesn't care about winning, I don't know how you make this same decision again and think you're going to get away with it. You've gotten away with it prior, and there's been reasons for you getting away with it. And if Paul Allen was still alive, I don't know if you would have had as much time to get away with this stuff. But we get to the end of the road on all this stuff where patience runs out for everybody. And it's hit that point for me with John, with this situation on this. And so it's very fair for many of you to post in the chat and say, this is what he's going to do. We can all hope it's going to be this. And I'm kind of with you guys. That's his track record, and when his track record is so fixed to going down a certain path, it's hard to predict him to leave that path. But I want to see the guy keep his job. I want to see him be a success here. I want to see them contend again. And I don't see how that happens with him taking the same approach. I don't. Zombie says Super Bowl script has been released. 30 seconds on the clock. Chiefs are down by 3. Mahomes throws it to the end zone. Richard Sherman intercepts it, takes it back for a pick 6. Seattle wins. Nick Guzman. John should go offensive line in the first and second, and then do whatever the hell him and McDonald want to do after that. Just make our bigness weakness a strength. Again, back to alignment and fandom Nick just being so much in lockstep in this one. When I just go through my chat and I read what people say about their team and the outlook of the team and understanding and doing this now well over 5 years and how there's always a lack of uniformity and how the fan base sees the team and what the team needs to do to take the next step forward. Sometimes it's we need the quarterback. Sometimes it's need better defense. Sometimes we got to go get this. We got to need a running back. And there's all of this difference of opinion. But this is one of those times we had in this offseason that I've gotten a feel for, Nick. That's exactly what your comment says towards, which is just that let's turn this weakness into a strength. Let's make this the number one priority. Let's stop making this the thing that sinks the team. It's the thing that is at the forefront of everybody's idea, I think, in pushing through this offseason. You just don't get this kind of uniformity, which makes me go back again and again, that beyond it being a personal opinion, that when there's so many that are on this board of seeing it in this way so clearly, without as much disagreement or dispute, then it's probably the right way. It's probably the pure way to go here. Wilbert, Brandon, I just think it's too much talent on the defense in this draft class. I just think it's too much talent on defense in this draft class. Offense late rounds. Yeah, I think that going early for value is definitely the way that it's drawn there, Wilbert. This is also back to the intelligence that could be applied by going out there and actually spending the money on your line out there in free agency to make sure that you get into this draft to where you're not having to be driven to get those offensive linemen early on and, leave basically value at that point, right? Exit from value so that you can get these need guys when you have good defensive players that you might actually like a little bit better to take than early on. Another place where it just makes sense to have that already, the hay is in the barn by the time you get to the draft. And so that you can then let your draft board be purely driven by value, not by need. And so you're absolutely right in your outlook in that early in this draft right now, the value would seem to be in round 1 and round 2 to maybe be pushing Seattle towards defense, that you could see how that plays out. It's like last year where you could see, hey, there's going to be a lot of offensive guys taken before we pick at, what were we at, 15, 16? You're going, man, if that's the case, there's really a good chance that the best value on the board for us is defense. You really could see the way that was going to go that way. And it's similar this year in that way too. Offense is going to probably be a bit overdrafted ahead of you in front of the 18. This draft's a little bit heavier at the top with defensive players. Yeah, you're right, Wilbur. There's a bit of a pullback to that. And you can take care of this by getting it taken care of in free agency. You don't have to let it go to become to the draft where you're like, well, we got to get our 2 starting inside, offensive linemen in this draft somewhere. Brian East says, why do I get the feeling John Schneider will be asking the new offensive line coach to polish a turd so he won't have to sink money into free agency and draft picks? Because that's been the part that he's played, and he has played it succinctly, and he has stayed in this line. It's 10 years. You rarely in football, Brian, get 10 years of data on anybody where they stay so much in alignment going down one certain road. Say nothing of 10 years in the same spot, same conditions, sometimes the same head coach. So, you guys are coming to these conclusions correctly in this outlook of it because this is who this guy has been. He has not been willing to deviate, not even a little bit. I mean, not even when he gets a success story that I've often referenced to, Brian, where the one time he makes a trade in 14 years for a high-quality offensive lineman, Dwayne Brown, and he overpays. He just wants to give up Jeremy Lane and a second-round pick. Texans get cold feet later, so they're like, we're going to fail the physicals, so maybe just send Dwayne Brack to us. We'll give you a third then instead, second and a third. Will that do it? You're going to give us a third? Yeah, we know you didn't think you got enough value, so here's a third back too. And it was a great success. You overpaid, and it was a great success. Great success, but never has gone down that, never taken that road again. Never tried to take that road again since then. Didn't take it prior to that. And it's definitely where he's been, Brian. And could he easily make Grubb essentially the scapegoat? Well, it's all a Grubb and his lack of commitment to the run and the 7-step drops. It's not my line. I gave him a line. It's those 7-step drops and the long developing plays and the lack of commitment to running the ball. That's why I messed up. That's why I was wrong. Not because of the talent. I can see him doing the same thing, man. I can see him doing the same bloody thing. I hope not, but I can see it. Hand grenade, if John Schneider ignores the offensive line this year, I'm on the sell the team bandwagon. I might just be as well at that point. Addicted Brandon, which will be tougher if nothing improves? You having to do game wrap-up shows or me trying to drown down bottles of bourbon during after games? Seriously, why watch that crap? Well, I might be downing bourbon at that point to get through the post-game videos, addicted. Yeah, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard on giving people, especially because so much of what I do at times is where people are looking for where is the optimism within this? Where's the light in it? And I can usually find it and provide this to people and be like, oh, look, I can see it. And I'm being honest too. I'm not just drumming something up. It's because I also believe it in what I'm mentioning of it. But if John's got such a hole in this game to ignore this, and then it plays out in the way we know it would play out if he did ignore it. Yeah, it's definitely going to remove some of the hype and some of the excitement for the team. I mean, it's part of why I think that you have a bit of the disinterest from the fan bases that exist right now. We were a bottom 10 team in what we were watched both locally and nationally last year. I mean, eyeballs are not on televisions watching Seahawks games at the same rate in even the city of Seattle that they were 5 years ago, 6 years ago. You know, that's a lack of, and the thing with that is that you have the Mariners in town at the very same time this is happening. This is the odd part about this when you want to cross one to the other, is that the Mariners are in town and people watch the Mariners and people go to the Mariner games. So it ain't just a lose, or it's also excitement and hope. And, you know, with Mariners, at least they got a young team that's exciting and maybe it'll click in at this point now. I mean, the hitting sucks, but they've got a plan they're in. It's not as the greatest plan, but you can see where their plan is. With John, there doesn't always sometimes seem the plan in place there on that. But I would get you, man, on that. It would definitely be a bit depressing on that if it's just we're going to stay in the same kind of, nope, we're not taking the left side of the fork, not taking the right side of the fork. We're going to drive down the middle, you know, that grassy land on 405 that's between both sides of the freeway, you know, that the police use to speed trap people. We're just driving down the middle of that. Neither freeway side, just right down through the grass. And it's limiting how fast we can go. Robbie Red, thank you for the $2 donation. What's Garrett's trade value and where does he go? It's a great question, Robbie Red. I think the first part is that we've got to throw out of his statement that this is not about money. This is going to be about money. So this is Myles Garrett, 29, wants his what will be last major contract he can sign in this sport. So he's going to want a big money market deal wherever he goes. This is not you're trading for him with 1 year of $19 million left on his contract. That's the first thing to consider here, Robbie, because I think that then does affect the value of what the Browns can expect back in return. They're talking big talk of 3 first-round picks. I think the more of the value you're going to get back as far as Browns go is more like 2 first-round picks and a player or two that are pretty good included. Not great players, but just, all right, these are pretty good additions in addition to the 2 first-round picks. So I don't think they're getting past the 2 firsts and a couple guys in play. I think the team that makes the most sense to me in the respect of it just aligns too much to what they need and having the money is you have the Cardinals who have $80 million to spend. They have what is going to be a very high first-round pick, a higher first-round pick to offer Robbie than the Detroit Lions, any of the teams that win the playoffs the past year, like the Eagles. I think that they have both the cap space to offer and they have the tasty picks that they can offer. The Cleveland Browns, I don't know if the Browns are going to be as interested in any of the players on their roster right now as far as wanting to return back on that side of it. But that would seem like the team to me that makes the most sense because they can offer that first round pick. And, you know, you got a Cardinals team from the Browns perspective that gives you a first round pick that's wherever were they, 13th, 14th-ish, wherever they're at right now here in this draft. And you go, yeah, that might also be a team that could easily, and given their track record, go and only win 4 games next year. And we've got ourselves a top 5 pick. So I think that would prove to be a pretty heavy pull. Does Myles feel like he's getting the box checked with going to a contender? Maybe not, but he's going to be paid $30 million a year. So I think that'll end up being the ultimate driver of that. It will be interesting to see if Myles really sticks to his guns on that. And it's really about playing for a contender, or it really then just becomes about which team's going to throw me the $30 million a year on a new contract with all this new bonus money that he really wants. But I think that's probably the cost. I'd say Detroit, Philadelphia are 2 other more likely landing spots than even us. Philadelphia, that's a kind of aggressive move they've been willing to make in the past, and they can sell hard the fact that he is going to a contender, bop to bop. I don't know if they're going to have the money to spend on him to get that deal done, though they're not an awful cap situation as it stands. You know, they've got some things they can do to do it, to make the deal happen if they really wanted to. Where are they at right now? So yeah, the Eagles are at $18 million. But if they wanted to get the deal done, they could get the deal done on that kind of thing. So 2 firsts and probably 2 players. If it's Seattle, Robbie, it'd be like 2 firsts, you know, Derek Hall, maybe Uchenna, 2 firsts, Derek Hall, Reek Woolen, something like that, maybe. Good question. Even more Seahawks, thank you for the $2 donation. Seahawks fans must hate DK to trade him to the Browns. So seeing some of those pop up in my Twitter feed as well here in the last day about what about moving DK to the Browns for Myles Garrett. And I don't see how there's any of that makes any sense at all. And can you trade DK to another team to get a first round pick and then package that pick with your first round pick to go get a Garrett, and maybe you can supersede other people's offering, like a Cardinals team says, okay, we'll give you 2 first round picks, but it'll be in successive years, where Seattle could tell the Browns, no, we'll give you 2 first round picks in this draft right now. You don't have to wait. Maybe that's enough to, push it past the line at that point. But there's no way your DK is a part of the included trade to Cleveland for Garrett. That's not going to happen at all. Whoever trades for DK are going to have to sign him to a contract extension, and the Browns don't have the money to sign anybody to a contract extension. They're going to have to do acrobatics just to get Myles Garrett moved. I mean, they'd have to pull everything down to the studs just to get Garrett out of town. So certainly aren't going to have money to go out there and sign a $30 million a year wide receiver this season. Addicted Brandon, are there a ton of defensive players to feast on? There are a ton of defensive players to feast on in the top 2 rounds. Really like Ed's choices. Also love me some Kenneth Grant at nose tackle. Yeah, it's always a good time as any right now to show the big board to you guys in light of this. Let's get the big board up. But that's kind of the way it's breaking down right now. So here's my big board. And as you can notice, let's just lock in at the top of the big board if we can here. Excuse me. And so what you'll notice here as you look at the big board is that I do have a lot of guards in the second round, but I don't have a lot of first rounders here. Receivers, I've got a bunch of second round receivers in there. 1 running back. Both those 2 quarterbacks will be gone, so there'll be no quarterbacks in the second round on my board at that point. No centers, no left other than Josh Connerly. I don't have any centers. He might go in the first round. So then you look at that, Addicted, and then you flip that over on my horizontal board to the defensive side. And what you notice here is that I've got more guys in the first round rated. Back to your point on the edges, I've got 4 first round edges here on my horizontal board. I've got an additional 5 edges in the second round. Kenneth Grant, I've got in the first round with Mason Graham, but then I've got another 3 defensive tackles in the second round. A lot of people have Walter Nolan going up even higher. A lot of people have TJ Sanders in the second round, Deion Walker in the second round, Tyreek Williams even in the second round. So it's heartily stocked up with defensive players. The corners are pretty deep too. The value can just kind of draw you in this direction, Addicted. It really can. And you can see how it could play out that way, especially keeping in mind that with this lean list that I show you on the horizontal board for offensive players, what's going to happen with these teams at the top of the draft? Offensive players are going to go fast and furious. We saw 14 straight offensive players go to start off the draft last year. It ain't going to go that crazy this year, but let's go to the consideration of it. Even if it goes 75% of last year and the driver of teams being pulled to offense, you're then very likely at that point to land at 18 with the highest base value of defensive player on the board, because of that thin offensive crop has been already reduced further. And then the defensive side is still very, very strong. It's very much where I see this playing out in the draft. It is. Yeah. Addicted Brandon, yeah, you mentioned the Mariners. If John is stubborn, I'll go sit outside of Mariner Stadium on sunny days and drink myself into a coma, laughing out loud. Maybe. Hey, maybe there'll be more hope, as little hope as we have for the Mariners right now. Maybe there'll be more hope for them on that one if it does go down that lane. Nick says, John not fixing the offensive line is going to break the fan base, and Gino at that. Nothing bad will come from improving the offensive line. That's, I think, the most maddening aspect of this. Who doesn't want a good offensive line? It's a great question, Nick. And I think those are all great points, too. It's a great question and great points within what you said. Who doesn't want this? What is the downside to doing it? I've mentioned many times over on this, Nick, that there's not been one team I can think of in recent memory in the NFL that has invested assets into the offensive line and gone overboard in that mark of things and come back to the end of the season and said, oh man, we really regret doing that. We could have built up a better team, a team that could have gone farther if we just hadn't put so much into the offensive line. Said no one ever. There have been teams, Nick, right, that have said, oh, we went a little bit too heavy on the skill positions. You know, the Bears still feel as good about drafting Rome Odunze rather than getting maybe some more offensive line help in there for their young quarterback. You know, there's teams that maybe feel like they go too heavy on the defense or they spend too much on their quarterback. But no one looks at that with their offensive line and goes, man, we overinvested in our line. That's what sunk us. That's where it went bad. It's maddening is the right word to use, man. Nick, it's maddening. It sort of, again, just defies logic as to why you'd arrive at this place, especially given that it's 10 years of it. 10 years. This is not a problem of just last season. It just kind of just popped up suddenly. It's been just kind of lingering. Thomas Cox says, I highly doubt Schneider will be aggressive this year, but do we honestly want him to be aggressive? Brandon Benton could develop the offensive line while drafting Jackson, Booker, and Banks, etc. Well, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, Thomas, of course, with this. But this is where my thinking comes back into on this, Thomas, is that I've said that this isn't all about being hyper aggressive here. What I've said is this, Thomas, is that what do you want to be as a team from John Schneider's perspective on this? John Schneider and his perspective, not just simply what he said in media over the last 10 years. I know I've referenced that in him and Carol every single offseason coming out and saying, we think we're contending this year. Not that we're going to back our way into the playoffs, but we're going to be a contending team for 10 straight seasons every single year. To a man, each guy said it. So they've done that, but beyond just saying it, Thomas, they've also done the secondary moves beyond telling you that to then show that that's also what they believed. We're telling you this is what we believe, and now we're going to make you make moves that are about today and pulling from tomorrow to show you we're about that. And they're not even being hyper aggressive there, Thomas. They're just being aggressive enough to peel for tomorrow, to pull more for today, to then make tomorrow a little bit more problematic once they reach that area of things. So when it comes to the let's not be aggressive thing, I've said that that's part of the fork that I see that's in the road, and that you have that fork you can do, which is the one step back to take the 2 steps forward by 2026. But then, Thomas, the key on that is this. If you're signing a Geno Smith and you're signing a DK Metcalf and you're going to add these 2 biggest contracts onto your books when you're walking into an offseason with $27 million in dead money, you do those moves because you believe you're a contender in 2026. You're not signing Geno at 35 years old for 2 years down the line when maybe you'll be ready to contend if those linemen develop. So that's part of that. If you're going back that step, then go back the step. Don't take the middle road, Thomas, on that. Take the one to the left or take the one to the right. Would I want him to be aggressive on this? Only if he's trying to contend in 2025. That's the caveat. That's the question to me, Thomas. And it's got to be not the sort of like answer that John's given the last 10 years where it's like, yeah, sure. Oh. No. Are you ready to contend this year or not? Do you want to contend this year or not, John? If this goes this way and that goes that way, and if this breaks right, and if this guy can just stay healthy and this thing can just happen, no. Are you trying to contend this year or not, John? I don't think we might be ready to do it. Okay. Take the left fork. Take the left one. And don't apologize for it. Explain it to the fan base. Sell it to the ownership. I'll support it, Thomas. I'll support it. Because you're choosing a path rather than sort of trying to hedge your bets. But I would like to see what you got to say on that too, on that. But that's where I just find myself sitting with it. Thomas says, I think if Seattle was planning on trading DK or Geno, they would went after an OC that isn't experienced. I just don't believe if Schneider and Mike McDonald will sell Kubiak, them trading DK, Geno, or both. Possible, Thomas, possible. Hard to say there right now on that. That is why I say when I said those 2 deals, you're signing those 2 deals. This is where I'm real specific on it, Thomas, on this, saying that like we can't do the middle path thing here. And that's a little bit of what I sometimes will get from people on this one. It's like, well, we could just we'll do some of this path on the left and some of this path on the right. My analysis is that over the past 10 years, that is what's caused you to not be a contending team. That is what's caused you to get stuck in purgatory. Well, just trust on the development. No, it'll be this coach that comes in and this coach will develop it and he'll be the one to, that's what's caused you to go down the wrong path here and to not be in a state of being contending. And if we're going to get there, we got to do things differently than what we've done prior, or else we're just back in the same point of purgatory as, once before. Wilbert, Donovan Azuruki is a problem. Get him at 50, grant 18. I love Donovan as a rookie. He is an absolute ball and knives off the edge. Absolute awesome dip move. just has a real plan of attack as a pass rusher. Just enough juice as far as quickness and dip and bend goes. He's fun, Willard. He's fun and tremendously productive out there with Boston College this past year. I wouldn't mind it as a 1-2 punch, and that would be 2 points of where the value on the board could draw you there to make those selections too. Thomas says, but after Luka trade, I'm not ruling out any trades. I don't care if it's Burrow, Lawrence, Garrett, or whoever. If Luka can go, anyone can go, Thomas. If a 25-year-old guy who just took you to the finals last year can be moved for not secondhand parts, but not commiserate value, then anything is possible. Angry B, is it safe to say Justin Herbert is a choke artist now? No, it's just that the Chargers have had a blind man's approach in their way that they're building the offensive line. Not the offensive line, just the offensive structure system scheme around Herbert through his time. And that includes this last year. I mean, he absolutely took advantage of finally getting a legitimate receiver out there and Lad McConkey. I know he had Keenan Allen there for a while, but Michael Johnson was like, he's okay. They got to the playoffs and the Texans did their best to take away McConkey. He still had 150 yards receiving. And when he wanted to try to throw it anywhere else, I mean, he had two guys that dropped passes that got intercepted in that playoff game, hand grenade. That's not on, those throws are not on Herbert. Those are on the players to catch the ball. That's the pass. You need to catch that. And that was when he was throwing to other guys other than McConkey. Quentin Johnson is awful. He's a bust. They targeted him 5 times in that game, and he looked like he couldn't catch a cold. And Disley had a drop for an interception that game as well. So he just needs more. You got to give that guy more. It's why you're hearing the rumors of a DK going to the Chargers. It's not as much about DK necessarily being available as it is the understanding of people and probably within even their own Chargers organization that even though they are very much a run-centric team, that they need to get more for Herbert to throw to. He can't just be throwing to guys who can't catch the ball. That's not going to work. No, I don't think he's a choke artist. SL Hazard says, if we go for Garrett, it'll probably be 2 first-round picks, Hall and Mafe. They don't have the money to trade for a player like DK. Yeah, I agree. They don't definitely have the money on the. I don't think it costs you both Hall and Mafe. I think it costs you one or the other, but I don't think it costs you 2. I mean, it's possible, but I'd be shocked if they cost you all that to get that job done with it. Orchie says, we need Garrett. It would be nice though, but that's too much. Everything right there. He's too old. It's too much money. Not the move for us. Well said. I understand it completely on it. I'm open to it, but I can get the other side of it too on this. Buller says we can build the defense in the draft to build an empire again. Let's go. Let's go. Or Jesus, Garrett's too old for that kind of money. I mean, you pay him that kind of money and get what, 2, 3, maybe 3 years out of him? Nah. I can understand the trepidation and the spend the money there, War Chief. I will say that if we look at this kind of position and we look at the track record of this position, not every position in the NFL gets to where you get a guy at 31 years old and they're tapped out. Are there positions where that does tend to be the way that it plays out? Running back? Yes. Cornerback? Yes. But I would offer to you, War Chief, that when it comes to defensive tackles and defensive edges, that does tend to be a position where guys can play really late in their career and still play at a really high level. Calais Campbell is 38 years old. He was the 6th highest graded edge by PFF last year. Ndamukong Suh played to 36 years old. DeMarcus Ware, Julius Peppers. You know, these kind of guys that are the freak show guys that are former top 5, top 10 type picks, that once they lose that half a step, they're still such freak shows and they've then advanced themselves technically so much that then they're still just about as tough to deal with as they ever were. Chris Jones is still playing at a high level in his 30s. Aaron Donald was still at the rocking it even when he retired. I remember with this too on this, War Chief. Reggie White was 32 years old when he signed with the Green Bay Packers. Garrett's 3 years younger than he was. Reggie White was an all-pro at 37 years old. Another guy, played old, played long, played good, played to late in his career at a really high level. So if this was a different position, War Chief, if we were talking about one of these other spots that does tend to be one of the cliffers, where you do fall off that cliff, I'd be with you on it. But this is actually one where there's a lot of reason to believe you can get another 6, 7 years out of Garrett if he wants to play that long. because that's been the track record of these kind of players that have that kind of prototype build to them. Nick says, I would do Garrett for 18, next year's first, Nwosu and K9, swap Hall for Nwosu, and make the future a second rounder. It's not all about getting Miles, but making sure the rest of the NFC doesn't. Well said. I certainly think the Cardinals are that team that's the front runner to go for them, to your point on that, Nick. And it could very well prevent them from doing that. I think that's fair value. SL Hazard, if we were 10-7 during a down year, the right player too, and we're contenders. Warchi says, what if bringing Garrett and he turns out to be Bosa from last season, not doing anything but getting paid? Bosa has much more of a track record of doing that, War Chief, than Garrett does, would be my answer to that. It's a risk to a degree, I guess. I would tend to think, War Chief, that if you have a guy that is a guy who's open to shutting it down, wouldn't that guy have shut it down in an environment like Cleveland at times when he would have every excuse and reason to do so? But yet that's not what we've seen from his game. Wouldn't we see a smattering over the last 3 or 4 years of him missing game after game after game here and there because he's like, what's the point of playing? I'm just going to preserve myself and get through. But that's not what we see. He plays 16, 17 games a season, even when his feet were hurting like this last prior year. And then the extra part of this, War Chief, is what happens when he actually gets to go to a contender. If he plays this hard for a non-contender, if he plays this hard for the dregs of the NFL, what happens when he's actually out there playing for championships? Is it much like with Reggie White? It's almost like an extra gear clicks into place a bit. And with Reggie, he wasn't quite as physically talented as he was as a young guy, so you weren't getting as good a player as he was young, but he was still, his dominance took that Packer team up over the top. Young says, pass on Garrett, stay the course, draft offensive line, get some young talent in here. I don't mind it at all. Addicted, Brandon, obviously Abdul Carter and Jack Sawyer are catching roses for top edges, but I kind of like JT Tuamaloa, the quiet OSU stud. 15, 14, 22 sacks, hits. 15 sacks, 14 hits, 22 pressures. Grant and JT signed me up. There you go, man. I'm a little bit colder on JT, but I'm also colder on Sawyer as well with that. So, I'm just not as big on those two guys particularly, but there's a lot of people that do love them quite a bit. I definitely will acknowledge. High effort guy too, Addicted. He'll give you everything he's got every snap. Thomas says, I want Seattle to be aggressive. I just don't want players that don't fit Kubiak's scheme. If it's taking a step back to be a contender or being aggressive, I just think it's a major deal. I think it's a major deal top. That's fair, Thomas, completely fair. And certainly like the two guys I advocated for potentially as guys, if you want to double dip and target and be aggressive this offseason, Thomas, and go for a Trey Smith and then go for a Drew Dahlman. And then that's really what you do in free agency. And then everything else is kind of left towards more of the draft. I think that's where you're aggressive. And then you're also finding offensive linemen that fit to what Kubiak does, in my opinion, because Dahlman can do all the movement based stuff that you require. Trey Smith is coming from a West Coast offense. I think both of those guys could be able to do that where it fits in alignment with it, and I'm not advocating for misfits. I'm not, but it's one place where if we want to be a contender, we want to be aggressive. To me, you get the rewards back on going for the linemen who you find the fits, you find the talent, and you find the guys that are ready to go right now, not the development guys that are going to take a couple of years to get there, but here they go. Let's go. They're going to get in there and they're going to know what they need to do day one. And it's going to be a shorter learning curve and thus more of an opportunity or chance for you to get to a contending state, I would think. War Chief says, sorry. Nick says, Garrett is the best pass rusher in the NFL. We're overpaying Nwosu and don't plan on resigning K9. Can we get a top 10 player in the league with number 18 or next year's first? I wouldn't think so unless we're really bad next year, Nick, to your point. Angry Day B, does it save the team money if we kept Nwosu for this year or better to trade him? It's better to trade him because you're going to save money, especially not knowing exactly what you're going to get back from him as far as performance, because he's been injured the past couple of years. But you save $8.4 million by letting go of Nwosu this year. That's a big slice, especially with the lack of confidence maybe in him health-wise. Thomas, I love Garrett and Parsons, but what got Seattle into mid-status is trading for players when they aren't contenders. Right now, they need to add to their interior offensive line. I think that's a fair point. Absolutely. Nick, swap Hall for Nwosu then. Just think a generational pass rusher like this doesn't come available often. Plus, do we really want Detroit, Philly, or Chicago, or Tampa Bay getting him? Definitely, possibly one of those teams grabbing him, especially with Detroit and Philly, I think, are two teams that are going to really push hard. Maybe a part of the process to think about here. There's good arguments on this on either side to be made with it. And the offensive line points are certainly fair ones in addition to this, for sure. If you do get Garrett, are you able to still address your offensive line in the major way you want to? I think you could, but it definitely would take a lot of creativity. Brian Kennicott, I understand the flawed approach of kicking Abe into guard. It's rooted in Abe being so good that he can fill that hole. Yes, but this new hole created at right tackle would be greater than the hole at right guard. That's my thinking on it as well here, is that he might solve you with your answers there at guard, but now you just opened one other hole here. It's whack-a-mole, where you whack that mole down, but now another mole is popping up at this other spot that you just had whacked down. And that's where it's just, to me, it makes less sense there to do that at that point. And I think if it's day one and he's just walking in and you want to move Lucas day one to guard, that would have made sense at that time. But 3 years in, I think the die is cast and he's pretty set there at tackle. And I think he can be a really good tackle in this league. And that's more valuable than a guard. As hard as it is for us to find guards, a good right tackle in this sport still way more important than a left guard or a right guard or a center for that matter. SL says, what's cost to a high level of production? This isn't going to be buyer's remorse situation like it was with Draymond Jones. Garrett is arguably the best outside linebacker in the league. What's the cost to a high level production? What's cost to a... It's true. You're getting a different guy than what you've had come through here in other times. And even in the other trades you made, Jimmy Graham, Percy Harvin, Jamal Adams, they were not the same type of player that Garrett is that you'd be bringing in. It's a different level of player. This is a guy who's legitimately in the argument to be one of the best edges in this league, if not one of the best edges in this sport. A complete edge at that. People bring up Micah Parsons' name, and Micah Parsons is every bit as good a pass rusher as Garrett is. He is not as good a run defender as Garrett is. He's kind of average as a run defender, all things being equal there. Thomas is also, I'd rather have a rookie quarterback like Russ was that just proved to be the guy than get Garrett, not trade for Garrett, and hope Seattle finds their next franchise guy. Let me read that. Also, I'd rather have a rookie quarterback like Russ was that just proved that guy than get Garrett. Then get Garrett, not trade for Garrett, and hope. Yeah, I'm with that too, Thomas. I mean, this is a little bit of going for the Garrett point, and again, completely valid reasons as far as some of your hesitancies when it comes to how do you build the offensive line up if you go get Garrett. Let's just say for consideration of this, Thomas, just walk with me on this one a little bit, that we are able to somehow figure out the offensive line in addition to making that Garrett move. That does happen and that does occur. Now we get back to that blueprint, right? That you've heard me talk about many times over. Why can't we take that same blueprint of 10 years ago? Why can't we build up the offensive line, make the defense a monster, have a good special teams, and then the quarterback is reduced from what's required from them to make that team go? And there's a lot of pushback I'll get on this where it's like, well, it's a different age now. You can't do that now. I do think you could do it again now. Was Russell a very special part of that equation that's hard to replicate? Yeah. And can we come to find that that's a bit of the secret sauce that we can't replicate in this situation of what we could from the past? Maybe. But I kind of think of it in those terms too there, Thomas, where this would also be a pathway that can kind of maybe drive you back around towards having more of a mode to, finding the guy in that second, third round who's maybe not the ultimately end all be all when it comes to talent at the quarterback position, but who is capable enough with the supporting cast that you pulled around him to take you to the promised land. War Chief says somehow Abe could possibly be a top 5 right tackle in this league. I wouldn't move him. Even when he was injured this past year, he was better than most right tackles in the league. Agreed and agreed, War Chief. Yeah. War Chief says, seriously, if we're going to make the move for Garrett, why not make the same type of big moves for somebody like Joe Burrow? Well, I think that Joe Burrow may not be available on the market, where there's much more of a likelihood of Garrett being on the market at this point. When Garrett comes out and actually does the memo to the public that he wants out, that's him not just doing kind of a soft sell job of Cleveland, give me a new contract. That's him really indicating to the Cleveland franchise that I'm going to push to make this happen one way or the other. And so he's just on the market right now. But if Burrow does become available, and you'll know this offseason if that's a possibility even, I think the team would absolutely be going as hard as they could over after Burrow. But yeah, Burrow's never like SL. Burrow never asked for a trade on that. Thomas says, if Garrett is a Seahawk, I will support it, but Seattle didn't play well against a contender. But Seattle didn't play well against a contender like the Bills, Packers, Vikings. I know offense is bad, but I want Mike McDonald to get more of his culture in before that happens. All very fair points on your part, Thomas. All very fair points. 100%. I completely understand where you're coming from in that way. Few more Seahawks. Thanks for the $2 donation. I read that one. Noah Lansing, thank you for the $2 donation. Is Micah Becton and Ryan Kelly Dahlman combo possible? Yeah, you can do it. This was my free agent, Noah. This was my free agent list from earlier. I had Trey Smith as number 1, but Drew Dahlman was my number 2 free agent on my board. I think he's going to be a 4-year, $45 million guy. I think Becton, who was my number 4 guy, is a 3-year, $33 million a year guy. So when you look at both of those 2 contracts, Becton's going to cost in the first year of his deal somewhere in the neighborhood of like about $5 million on the first year of the cap, $6 million in the first year of the cap. You'll probably be with Dahlman because he's got the 4th year in about the same territory, because you have the 4th year to kind of stretch out the cap if you want on that one. So, cumulatively, you need to create about $13 million of cap space to fit them both in if you want to aggressively go after them for the first year cap hit there, Noah, because we've got the cap space in 26 and 27 to put some of the money and bury it down the line. They can get their guaranteed, they can get their bonuses. We just get that first year cap hit lowered down to fit them in. You could do it because while both of them are going to make a big amount of money this offseason, it still is very pliable to be able to fit them both in if we pull the levers that we need to pull to make that happen. Specifically, these levers right here. Rayshawn Jenkins, $5.4 million. Noah Fant, $9 million. Draymond Jones, $12 million. Tyler Lockett, $17 million. Uchenna Nwosu, $8.4 million. George Fant, $3.8 million. Roy Robertson Harris, $6.6 million, giving you a total of $62 million of freed up cap space from just releasing these 7 guys. There are still more levers you can pull beyond this to create more space beyond this, including potential extensions to DK Metcalf and Geno Smith. But at the very minimum, at the floor, you can create $62 million in space if you need to. So they can get the deals done there, Noah. It's just a matter of, does John have the will? Does he have the stones? Does he have the audacity? That's going to be the part that remains to be seen. Micah says, or maybe Garrett is happy. He's off the Browns, laughing out loud. Nick says, who says Cincinnati would trade Burrow? Well, some of this would have to come from Burrow's side of it, Nick, and how he'd have to push this on his end. And again, it's a bit of math there that we'd be doing on this one where he's not out there saying it quite yet, but Burrow's also going to be watching this offseason with Trey Hendrickson, their best defensive player, leaving. Keeping in mind, Nick, that they just had DJ Reader leave last season. The year before that, Jesse Bates left. They've seen a bit of a drain out of the defense of that talent. Defensively, and then offensively, you're losing T. Higgins in free agency, no doubt about that. Jamar Chase is maybe also going to be lost. Nick, does Burrow want to go through another whole rebuild at 28 years old? And a pretty deep rebuild at that with the Bengals. I mean, especially in that division. I'm doing a little bit of math on this one, Nick, I am. But I would be not at all even mildly surprised to have Burrow come out and write some kind of letter like, Myles Garrett just wrote. I wouldn't be shocked in the least. I had my home broken into this past year. These fans are crazy. Get me out of the city. Maybe not like that, but, I'm spitballing. Thomas is my main problem. My problem is that if Garrett was a difference maker, why is Cleveland drafting top 3? My pushback to you on that, Thomas, would be that Cleveland has been drafting top 3 my entire lifetime. Don't think that has anything to do with Myles Garrett. I think that they're going to be drafting top 3 long after Myles Garrett leaves, because that's who the Cleveland Brown organization is. That's kind of Thomas, isn't that kind of like saying well, how good was Joe Thomas really? Yeah, you can, in football, it's a 55-man roster, and no matter how great you are, there is only so far you can pull and carry that club up on your back as that great player. You need help. Everybody needs help. So I don't think it's quite fair on this one to say, well, Garrett's not that good of a player here. This is all, in my opinion, Thomas, about the inequities, the ineptitude, the idiocracy of the Cleveland Browns organization. They are at fault here. And my proof being, again, the 1980s Browns, the 1990s Browns, the early 2010 Browns, all of them were this same kind of team. Dysfunctional, broken. We had what 1 year, Thomas, with Derek Anderson getting him in the playoffs, but absent that, it's been the same story every single year on that side. One man can only do so much. Thomas Cox, what's your opinion of the TCU receivers? Helms from Texas, etc. I really do I like the 2 wide receivers for fun factor, Thomas, more from TCU than I like the boring Texas receivers. The Texas receivers might be better, but I just have more of an affinity for the TCU guys. I don't know what to think about Savion Williams. He's 6'6", but he moves like a running back. Not necessarily a pure route runner, not necessarily an exact X, but he's really fun. Just get the ball in his hands and let him work. Guy could be a lot of fun. I've got a 3rd round grade on him. I see him go in the 2nd round, but just a guy, get the ball in his hands and let him cook, man. He's awesome. I think Jack Besh, Thomas, I think he's Cooper Kupp. If Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua had a baby, I think that would be Jack Besh. He's not quite got the young Cooper Kupp lateral change of direction stuff close. He's got the contested catch stuff of Puka. He's got the early yak stuff that Cooper could give you early on in his career. I favor him a little bit. I've got a 2nd round grade on Jack Besh, Thomas. I favor him a little bit more. He's just, there's something about him I just like. And I would not be surprised, at least, if the Rams ended up taking him in the 2nd round just because they see him as a carbon copy of a young Cooper Kupp. Gunnar Helms, H-back from Texas, is solid. I've got a 3rd round grade on him. I have Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, and Mason Taylor as my now 3 2nd round guys. I've got Harold Finnenan as my guy at the top of the 3rd round, and then it goes to Gunnar Helm. I think that he is more H-back than he is more in-line guy. I don't think he's as much a blocking type guy, but a tremendous pass catcher, really big catch radius, runs really good routes, good body control. He can really extend to make that catch. Good contested catcher, contact catcher. You can be jostling him and he'll still reel it in. A real weapon. I do think as a blocker, though, that holds him back a little bit, and that's why I dinged him down to more of a 3rd round, where I do think, in the case of those other 3 tight ends at the top especially, they give you a little bit more as far as blocking goes. I don't know how much he's going to give you as far as kind of a yak guy after the catch either, whereas a guy like Tyler Warren and Loveland will give you a little bit of that on that side of it. But all those guys are a lot of fun, Thomas. A lot of fun. Thomas says, I missed the thing, sorry. Thomas says, Burrow is competitive, so I wouldn't be surprised that it doesn't happen that he isn't very happy with the Cincy moves. The Bengals remind me a lot of the Seattle Mariners. Me too. Yeah. And I wouldn't blame him either on that. It's part of doing this math a little bit is like, man, if I was in a situation If I'd gone through what I'd gone through there, especially when he walked in the door and they gave him this crap-ass offensive line that got his knee shredded in the first couple of years and being Cincinnati, I'd also be like, I mean, they're still kind of never quite, Thomas put that offensive line together for him. You know, that's always seemed to be always a work in progress one way or the other when it comes to the Bengals. But yeah, I just kind of could see it. I mean, especially if Chase goes. I mean, that's going to be like Chase goes and T. Higgins goes. To me on that one, he's looking at that going, really? What are you guys going to do? Bring in Alec Ayamore from Amanamore from Stanford? Is that our grand replacement? Matthew Golden for Jamar Chase? That'd be a tough sell to Joe, I think. And Grenade Pumpkin wanted to be up front and center. Yeah, she did. She's got to have the right angle. Mr. Kane, if we are still a year away, if John goes big on one top shelf offensive lineman and John Schneider and John especially and a John Schneider special, and brings me a second round, I'm not mad. Go hard next year spending for the final pieces. I'm okay with that too. It's a bit of what Thomas has advocated for on this a little bit, is get this stuff fixed up ahead of time. And I'm right there with you, Mr. Kane, on this, where it's truly is that fork in the road for me. And it's a fork where I can be talked into going either side of the fork. We want to do the step back and be patient, and we got to give this a year. We are all chomping at the bit to be a contender. We all are. We all want that. But it's also about not what we want. It's about what is the intelligent way to put this team in the right path to being successful and opening up a Super Bowl window that can be elongated as long as possible. It's all of that stuff. And part of getting there is sometimes having to take a step back to do the 2 steps forward. So I'm okay if they take that left-hand turn off the fork or the right-hand turn, but it's only 2 different options. There's not a third option here for John. And if he takes that third option, to me, Mr. Kane, we're not going to satiate us on either side of this, whether being for a contender in the here and now or for setting the table up for the future to get to that state of things. Thomas says, that's true. Cleveland was drafting tops since 1995. I was like 15 years old and my dad was a kid when they had Jim Graham. It's been a while. I mean, even in the 80s, Thomas, it was a very mild amount of success, right? It was Schottenheimer there with the Browns, and then they had Bernie Kosar, and you had like a mid-80s point where they were kind of good for a second. They got to the conference championship against the Broncos there in the mid-80s, and then they were toast. That was it. That was the last of the blink. And then you had Derek Anderson in like 2007 with that team that they were able to roll through with a little bit. Other than that, they've got nothing done in our lifetimes. Nothing. The Bengals have been way more of a successful organization than Cleveland throughout my life. In fact, it may be they're the worst, even beyond Detroit. At least Detroit's had this current run. Even this current run of Detroit is better than anything that I've seen from Cleveland in my lifespan. I mean, they are the worst run organization, and for decades on end. Jesus, even when they move from the city, even when you get a whole different ownership group, just whatever ownership group resides in that city, because remember they went from Cleveland to Baltimore, and then the NFL gave them a new one. Here's a new Cleveland. Still the same old thing. Albert Nickus, hey B, do you think it's possible to get Garrett Burrow and the top 2 offensive linemen this offseason? No. You'd have to go between a Garrett or a Burrow. You'd have to pick one or the other. You can still take care of the offensive lineman with either of those 2 conjunctive moves, but it's either one of those and the lineman. It's certainly not all. It's not going to be all 4. Addicted Brandon, if Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua had a baby, who the heck is doing the breastfeeding? Good question. It's a shared responsibility. It's communal, Addicted. Thomas, I get it. I believe Garrett did all that he can. He reminds me of Cortez Kennedy in 92. I remember when Seattle was trading their star players to other teams and me saying, I will never see a Super Bowl, laughing out loud. I remember that feeling as well, man. Yeah, very good comparison. Similar kind of comparison there with Tez on that 2-14 teams. Like, what could you ask that guy to do more? You know, it certainly wasn't his fault that you were there. It really was your team was just collectively that bad. That horrible. Sure, you might have not even won one game if not for Tez that year. Nick says, does Burrow have a no trade clause? If so, that could mean he wouldn't want to go to a rebuilding team like Vegas, Tennessee, Newark, or New Orleans. Let me look it up. I'm not reading any no trade clause in his contract. Maybe though. But nothing's coming up on a Google search with that. Not sure. I think it will be hard, Nick, on this with him with Cincy. I mean, I don't think he's gonna. I think you're right. I don't think he's signing off on just going to anywhere, even if he doesn't have a no trade clause. It'd be a hard sell, but it'll also probably be tough for him, Nick, to come to Cincinnati and say, "Look, I want to trade. I can't do this here anymore. You guys are not on the pathway," and then him to also then try to sort of pick where he wants to go. Some quarterbacks have been able to pull that off, but it can get a little bit tricky. Thomas Cox, Mason Taylor's Taylor's kid. I didn't know that. Super athletic, just like his dad. I'm hoping to draft Taylor. He's really good, man. He's a complete tight end. He reminds me a lot, Thomas, of Sam Laporta a couple of years ago coming out. And you really like with Sam, you really know what you're getting with this kid. He's raised up the board over Fannin for me. He's climbed up in the second round, partly by the Senior Bowl and just some of the stuff you hear about him background-wise. He just sounds like a really hard worker, all about ball. The lineage stuff really works well when you have those kind of guys like that, Thomas. It's a little bit like Antoine Winfield Jr. coming out a couple of years ago, where you loved his dad and the way he played. You go, man, if this guy's even partially cut from the same kind of cloth, he's going to be a hell of a player. Everything you were hearing from him coming out of the Minnesota program with Winfield was just that. And then he has been just that as a pro. So probably a pretty safe bet on a guy like Mason Taylor with that. Thomas says, Besh from TCU is a great player. That'd be awesome to replace Lockett. He really would, Thomas. Contested catch and yak. Two things missing from this receiving core majorly right now. And he brings those in big part if you brought him in here, Thomas, And top of just being a really talented kid, really capable, really ready, I think really ready to go from that Z position. He's fun. He's kind of one of my guys in this draft, Thomas. From the receiving core, I mean, both him and Savion are kind of two of my just guys that I have a certain affinity for. Addicted Brandon, yeah, why is Joe sticking around in the city of Cincinnati? Find some greener pastures, dude. Well, this season would be the offseason to do it. I think it would have been harder for him to do it last year where his contract was just kind of kicking into place through the first year. I think it's easier now, especially given if, these departures happen, where last year he was still having T. Higgins and Hendrickson and Jamar Chase, and, he had his stock was still fully up around him. But if that gets drained away, I think it's a bit of a different picture from Burrow's position on this. Thomas, I have a draft with a trade back, but I drafted Booker, Sawyer, Dart, and Taylor with the Ohio State center. Good draft, Thomas. Solid. Hawks Eye View, please. John Schneider, don't make Seattle known as the fans that frown by the sound. Fans that frown by the sound. It's got a hell of a ring to it, my man. That's poetic. Warchie says, Cleveland had that awesome one-year running back that made the cover of Madden, number 40. That was cool. Yeah, the great Peyton Willis, man, with the cool-ass face helmet guard thing he had. Boy, he was a one-year wonder. And Dick Docs, Brandon, communal. Laughing out loud, thanks. Noah Lansing, thank you for the $2 donation. How much do we save in 25 if we extend Geno and DK? This is a very much in general terms, take it for this, Noah, because it obviously depends on the exact way the numbers bear out on the final contract. And especially in Geno's case, I'm expecting it to be somewhere between 35 and 40, but it could be above 40. So that could be adjusting a little bit of this, but in general terms, in looking at the numbers of what Geno's due to cost on the books right now and what DK's due to cost on the books right now, if you sign them both to contract extensions, you would save $5 million on both players. So $5 million on DK, $5 million on Geno Smith on new contract extensions with the team on the first year of the deal, of that new deal. So it's, yes, you'd be signed to the big deal, like DK would be over the 30 million and bop it and all that. But there's a difference between what the guy's making on average and what the first year cap hit will cost. And it's very important with Geno and DK because of the fact that we have so much cap room in 2026 and 2027. So there's not as much worry on that if we bury a little bit of that money down the river to get the deals done in the now. But $5 million each would be about what you save. So Noah, to put this in perspective, if you've got the $62 million on my sacred 7 players that I've put here at the top of this board of released guys that seem straightforward releasings that'll be no-brainers, and then you add the 2 Geno and DK's extensions into the mix, now you've got $72 million of freed up cap space to work with. And that's with Geno and DK coming back into the ranks. Good question, though. Hawks Eye View, Brandon. Didn't John Schneider and Pete Carroll set up the future of the Hawks when they went with T-Jack and built the team and then drafted Wilson? Yeah, they got, what they did is what a lot of people will tell you, Hawks Eye, and I was just on listening to Jesse last night talking about this, and a lot of people have the outlook of this of what you do first is you draft the quarterback, then you get the offensive line, then you start to, you work through the rest of the stuff. From my perspective, the way it actually works is that you put the offensive line in place first, and then you get the quarterback of the future. And if you don't have the offensive line in place, then you get the vet like a T-Jack or like a Geno Smith that can work around that porous offensive line. And if they get hurt, it's not that big of a deal because they're not the, QB of the future guy. So yeah, that would be a bit back to that blueprint that 2012 blueprint, essentially, that you're getting the line done first before you draft the young quarterback specifically. Hand Grenade says, B, get O-line plus Burrow equals Super Bowl. It very well could. And if you do go get Burrow, I would be utterly shocked if the next couple of moves you don't make beyond Burrow wouldn't be to address directly the offensive line, especially in free agency. Warchief Brandon, when it comes to the Rams, Aaron Donald does all the breastfeeding. You know it. He's a hungry guy. He needs the protein, Warchief. The TRT is only going to take him so far. The roids are only going to take him so far, Sometimes you just need that pure breast milk to get you through. The power of roids and baby's milk. Thomas, I thought Russ was a Seattle lifer and Seattle could trade him to Denver. Any player could cause problems and force their way out. Carson Palmer did in 2005, maybe later. And that's the thing with it too. I love the Carson Palmer reference on this, Thomas, because with me, a lot of what I try to do when making predictions of stuff is like, do we have a track record? So if you have a team with a quarterback like Burrow and people say there's no way that they would ever trade him, you go, well, has this organization ever moved a guy? And in Carson Palmer, you have an exact situation of what Burrow is currently within and residing within, albeit a little bit younger in his career from where Palmer was dealing with it at. I have had some success here. I'm a number 1 overall pick at the quarterback position. I have been beaten up. I've had my knee shredded here. So I've gotten that benefit of a little bit of that lax supporting cast, although it was a kind of a dirty play by a Steelers player back in the day that caused Palmer to get his knee shredded. But I see some of the same conditions, Thomas, in history, may not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And to me, Palmer in this case rhymes with Burrow. We'll see, though. Maybe he's a good soldier and he's just quiet the whole offseason and doesn't come up. He's definitely going to have to push it, Thomas, on his side of it. Thomas, I want to know what Jake and Jesse thought would be Burrow's requested trade in Seattle. I want to know what Jake thought would be if Burrow requested a trade and Seattle got him in the sweepstakes. NFC West would be throwing a fit. Oh, they would be freaking out. They would be freaking out, Thomas. You better believe it. Especially in Jesse's case with all the consternation that goes around their quarterback. I mean, we land Burrow at the same time that they spend $50 million on Brock Purdy. You know what I mean? Swallow that one down from a 49er fan standpoint. So we signed Brock Purdy to fit. What happened with Seattle? They just got Burrow, dude. And what you said, there was a contract with the Niners just signed? We just signed a contract? Yeah, man, we just signed Brock. But you just said that I'm sorry, dude. Burrow, Brock, I'm getting confused. Wait, Seattle traded for Burrow. And we just signed Brock. A same day? Yes. What do we pay him? $50 million a year. Seattle just traded for Burrow. We're giving him $50 million a year. They'd lose their heads. They would absolutely lose it out there. San Francisco, Santa Clarita. That'd be worth the trade on its own and watch their heads pop. Thomas says Pete Alonso signed with the Mets. Oh, look, Mariners aren't spending any money again. Who would have ever thought? Thomas, I like Warren, Taylor, but kind of iffy on Loveland and Helm. They're good. I get it to a degree. Loveland, I think, had some injuries, and the quarterback position wasn't as good with him this year and what he was dealing with. I mean, the nice thing that you get if you're Taylor and Warren there, Thomas, is you've got Drew Aller and Nussmeier throwing you the ball. That's a lot better than what Loveland and Helm had. Some guys throwing to him pretty decent too, but it's also in kind of a run-first offense there with Loveland. But I think he's going to be good. I don't think he's going to be a difference maker, and I've got Warren ahead of him, but I do think he'll be good. Thomas says, I remember when Palmer tore his ACL in 2004. After that, he was unhappy, so I believe Burrow and Cincy breaking up is a matter of time, especially if Mahomes keeps winning. It's kind of how I'm seeing it, and it's advanced math, Thomas, it is. It's not where it's like, well, I've got a lot of smoke to base on this fire. It's definitely kind of one of those kind of just gut instinct things. But in talking about this too, Thomas, this is what I was saying earlier about this, is that I brought this up about Myles Garrett in season. The same kind of tuning fork gut instinct thing that's coming out right now. I had the same draw and feeling in regards to Myles Garrett during the season and going, I kind of feel like Myles is going to want his way out of town this offseason. And I don't think anybody on this channel has ever heard me saying that I thought this offseason would be the season that Myles Garrett's going to push to get out of there. This is going to be the offseason Myles Garrett's going to push to get out of there. Quite the opposite, where I've always thought that Cleveland would keep him there as long as they possibly could. But this was the season mid-year where you go, boy, it's been a long time. Career starting to get to 29. The future has no hope there in Cleveland. And Burrow's got a lot of some of the similar things that he's going to maybe be facing with Cincinnati there. Maybe not as bad and dark away, and that it's, there is a salvageable point for him there within Cincinnati than first Cleveland. But boy, you could sure see it coming up, couldn't you? Addicted Brandon, I hear you about the O-line fix and then get a quarterback, but curious, if you had to take a quarterback after round one, is it Howard over Dart, or are you starting to warm up to Dart? I'm more Howard over Dart. I think Dart's getting elevated through the post-season pre-draft process, and that always makes me nervous. I think what happens is some of these NFL teams do the, analysis, paralysis by analysis, and you start to sort of talk yourself in and elevating guys up a little bit higher than they should just go. It's a coin flip between the two of them for me, Addicted, because I have them both in the third round, right at about the same value. So it really is a coin flip. They both have equivalent pluses and minuses. Dart's maybe got a little bit more arm strength than Howard. Howard's got more size. They're both very similar decision making, and the arm strength is not that far apart in between them. Dart's got more short area burst. I get away from things inside the pocket a little bit easier. I think that Howard's got a little bit more of the long speed going for him when he gets up to speed and downhill. He's got a little bit of that Josh Allen like open field speed once he gets going. But both are fun players. Both are third round guys. But they're so close aligned in where my evaluation is for both. I like them both. Yeah. Thomas says, I always believe history always repeats. It's kind of, to me, Thomas, how the simulation keeps things efficient, right? We'll have to constantly think of always new stuff throughout. Just kind of keep repeating through so you can just kind of keep recycling the code through, right? It's what we do with computing. Why wouldn't we do it with the simulation? But I agree. That sounds to stop, Brandon. I'm about to bust. Mr. Kane says, I'll take Burrow and be happy. I would too, Mr. Kane. God, that'd be a big smile on my face. Ornacity says, just made dinner from scratch and you're still here. Best streamer for real. Oh, thank you, Ornacity. I appreciate that, man. Discussion's going along great tonight. I wanted to get rolling with you guys here and kind of discuss some of these things. So I appreciate that. Tom says, okay, night, got to get up super early. I will do mention, folks, we will probably put a little bit of a button on this pretty soon. I will be, though, I've got a new game coming out tonight at about 9 o'clock. It's going to release, which is Civilization 7. It's a new game coming out this evening. So we will be wrapping up tonight here relatively soon. But if you guys want to keep up the discussion this evening, I'm going to be up late. I'm going to be up just rocking that game through the night. I might not even get to sleep tonight. So if you guys are looking for a place to hang out later on this evening, 9 o'clock afterwards, I will be out over there, rocking it out over there on that side of it. I would love to be able to hang out with you guys. You guys get a chance to come back in over there and chill out. So if you're not already, please do follow me over on Twitch. I am the Seahawks Nest. Type the Seahawks Nest in, I should pop right up, or you can click in the description link section below. I also show up underneath there as well. I think Docs, Brandon, yeah, Howard makes sense. I kind of, the thing I fall back to is the difference for me between them because they are so close for me. And I think technically I'd dart ahead of Howard on my mock board, but I think I still would put Howard ahead of him. I just like that 235 size to him. Those 6'1.5" guys that weigh 210. I really do worry about the 300-pounders landing on them consistently and wondering if that really is something that they just get squished. They're very easy to get squished at 205. It's like that extra 30 pounds gives you a little bit of the cushion for the pushing, you know? You need the cushion for the pushing as a quarterback, at least. I don't know if you need it in all areas, you know? That's kind of dependent by each man, you know? Some men need a little bit more cushion for the pushing than others, you know what I mean? When it comes to my quarterbacks, I like the cushion for the pushing because when you get those little smaller guys, and let's watch with Bryce Young, for instance, on this as we go into the future of him is, okay, he's starting to realize his talent now. Is he really going to be able to hold up in the long term? You know, is he really going to be able to take an NFL beating over years and years and years and not have major injuries hit him? He's been already dinged up a couple times. I get worried about those guys. And Dart's a well-built 6'1.5", but he's still a 6'1.5", 210-ish, 215-ish guy. Still just a little light in the pants on that one. Borchu says, Brandon says, let's put a button on it. That means he's going for another hour and a half. You know it. Angry Day B, did you see the rumored DK contract extension? No, let me look. AP sources, Seahawks expected to sign Metcalf to an extension. Two people with knowledge of the deal say the Seahawks are expected to sign DK Metcalf to a 3-year contract extension worth up to $72 million and $58 million guaranteed. Wait, that's got to be the old one. That's from a couple years ago. Ignore that. That's got to be from a couple years ago. I don't see anything on here as far as a update as far as anything I'm seeing as far as... Where did you see the rumor on that hand grenade? Nothing's coming up on Google, at least. Maybe Twitter's got it rolling. X, whatever. You know what I mean? One of those ones. Wouldn't shock me if they did it. I wouldn't shock me. I'd like to see where the rumor's coming from exactly on it. But 3 years, 88. That's 29.3. So, I mean, you're getting a bit of a... You're not paying full market prices at that point. 32.5 was what I thought it would be around, and so you're 29.3. You're on a little bit of the lower side of it. The numbers make sense at that point, hand grenade. You're not overpaying at that price, that's for sure. Rand says, I know how Civ players are. You won't be getting any sleep tonight, laughing out loud. I probably won't. So I'm saying come over there, hang out with me over on Twitch tonight, folks, because I'll be in there just... I'm going to go crazy town. I love that old game. I played the old game like thousands and thousands of hours. So I'm going to be on this game quite a bit throughout the offseason. I have a feeling over on the Twitch side of it. Mark Sanchez, thank you for the $5 donation. He says, hey, B, did you have a chance to look at Shock? And Shedeur has a big tell. He taps the ball before he sends it. Big no-no and a habit hard to break. Yeah, you don't like ball tapping. That's for sure. Harder to keep control of the ball, and you want the quiet motion all the way throughout because it's so easy when you add a bunch of extra mechanics into what you're doing, Mark, to then have those extra mechanics, then have the ball just get a little bit offset just by just a fraction of an inch is enough in those moments in that way. If you're in there doing that and you're tapping the ball like this in your hand as you're coming back, that it can cause exactly that as you're trying to go into your set. So yeah, not a good habit. Reminds me of Mark chewing on the nails as a kid, and trying to break that habit. It's a little bit equivalent to that. So I'm not a big Shedeur guy. I'm really not. I mean, he's fine. But it's like, do you want to draft a quarterback? You're like, hey, we got a quarterback of the future. He's fine. Doesn't exactly inspire a lot of excitement. I did watch a bit of Tyler Shock today. I did not have a chance to quite get into the full details of the tape with him, Mark, but I was impressed for being a little bit of the smaller school guy. With most of these small school guys, every time I go to them, or not just small school guys, even just like moderately big but not big schools, like a Curtis Rourke with Indiana or Kyle McCord with Syracuse, where the first thing that jumps out when you watch these guys will be, okay, I've got another soft tosser here. I've got another Lob City guy here, where he's not getting over 90 on the gun. That's his fastball. That's where it tops out at. And I will say with him, there's a couple of throws initially watching him set up where it seemed like he really does have a little bit more of the ball jumping out of his hand than a guy like a Rourke or a McCord. So first thing that stepped out to me is a good free and easy delivery. He's able to deliver the ball while he's getting hit in the pocket based on some of the cut-ups I saw where he can have guys kind of really loading in on him and he still gets the throw off. He throws with pretty good anticipation too, Mark, where he does not have to see it exactly wide open. But I do have to do more of I want to, before I give you the full evaluation, let me get back in and just check a little bit more out on the actual game film with him. It was more kind of the highlights with him today. I just didn't have a chance to get kind of quite into the full game action with him. But I liked what I saw from him as far as that arm talent goes, because that is the thing that just over and over every draft that those guys will be missing, where you just get the feeling from these guys where you'll get he's 6'1", and he throws heavy. He's really accurate and great ball placement, but like everything's coming off with just eking out of his hand, just barely getting out of his hand and just kind of losing all of that juice as it gets out the other side of it. But that's not with Tyler Shock. He's got, I wouldn't say it's like a strong arm, but it's definitely much more better than what I typically see from those guys in that 4th, 5th round range. I mean, I think I think he might have a stronger arm than a guy like a Riley Leonard, for instance, Mark, in this draft. So interesting guy, another interesting guy. I'll do a little bit more of the deep dive on him for the next one. I promise you on that. But yeah, Shedeur, there's some stuff with him. It's kind of a B+ prospect that's going to go in the top 5 too. That's the thing with Shedeur and with Cam. I mean, Cam's going to go probably top 10, and you just go, man, these guys are being driven by the need of the position, not by their talent. That's troubling when you're looking at the quarterback of the future, man. That's the exact opposite end of where you want to be when picking a quarterback. Is you're being driven for need, quite literally. And it doesn't matter whether it's quarterback or any other position on this, Mark. When need is driving your selection high in a draft, that is the pathway to hell when it comes to drafts and hope for draft success. And it's gonna lead the Giants into the same area if they do this again, I think, as well, with whoever these teams are, they're going to take one of these guys high. I think they're going to be very disappointed by their pick in retrospect. Thank you for the donation, though, Mark. Appreciate you, man. Randall McDaniel, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, hey, bro, listen to some of the opening montage. Got to Calais. Anyone outside the box from 8 to 20? Sam Darnold make the list? Thoughts on quarterback and offensive line coach hires? Darnold did not make the list. I just think Seattle's much more likely to go with Geno at lesser of a cost and price and I think Sam's going to have his cost driven up a little bit too high to make it worthwhile. Anybody that was outside the box on that, I would say a lot of the guys that were moving through Randall, when you get in through, like you said, 8 onwards onto my list, these were more of guys that were into the kind of value signings. Dalton Risner, as I was calling him on the live session, Randall, these are more John Schneider specials. Brady Christensen, more John Schneider specials. Will Hernandez, John Schneider, Brandon Scherf. T.R. Tart's a guy that I think is interesting as an outside-the-box guy. If you're looking at getting maybe the nose tackle, so you don't have to draft that one in the first round of this draft, and then you can move Byron Murphy to nose. He's not going to cost a lot, I think, at 3 years, $17 million, but maybe a guy that kind of fits into that department of things. Not really a lot of other guys outside of the box. Asante Samuel is maybe an outside corner, 1 year, $5 million deal, 25 years old, injured last year, but a guy still with a lot of potential and upside to him. I think maybe the only guy that I would point to for you on this would be like a Jedrick Wills. Maybe Randall getting out ahead of the Micah Becton situation, where we're looking at Micah Becton right now, but we could be the team to go look for the next Micah Becton, which would be that former top 10 first round pick, who's maybe not quite worked out as a tackle, that maybe looks to be a better guard at the next level. And Jedrick Wills would be that guy for Cleveland. He was taken number 10 overall by him a couple years ago. A lot of people thought he'd be a better guard. Maybe a guy that you could look to pump into guard there, and he'd only cost you a couple $1 million. On top of maybe being able to give you a little bit of help as far as insurance when it comes to Abraham Lucas, if Lucas has got some injuries that pop back up with his knee. So not really a lot of other guys outside the box. It's a very thin free agent period. There's just, the names are very thin, Randall. There's not many guys out there to pick from. It's very, very light. As far as the coaching hires, the offensive line coach that they got's got a great background. I'm going to get some more water here. Bear with me one, folks. So the offensive line coach has got a good background. As far as he's been in a lot of stops, but he seems to have that good track record there, Randall. I need to kind of go through each of his individual spots to get more of an idea of how those lines really performed overall. And I haven't had really a chance to quite get into that yet, Randall, with it. But on the first kind of sniff test of it with the offensive line coach, he looks good. He looks much more legitimate than what we've had from Dickerson and last year with Huff in recent years. This is more of like the Mike Solari hiring, where, and Solari been here a couple different times, but he's a very capable guy in what he brings, and I think that's very much what you're getting here from this guy too. The thing that stood out to me in looking at Kubiak and bringing him on as a potential year, Randall, was that all of the offensive linemen for that New Orleans team all played, not only did they perform better than they had last year to a man, Randall, but a lot of those guys had career best seasons, like a Cesar Ruiz. Even guys that were already really good, like an Eric McCoy, were having the best years of their career before he went down to an injury. And yeah, some of that's Kubiak, but some of that's that offensive line coach as well. And the quarterback coach was a guy that's a little bit to a lesser degree like the offensive line coach, been around the league in a lot of different areas, and had success recently with the Chiefs or with the Vikings as an offense. We're getting late in the stream here, folks. I can see this is always when my head starts to spin out a bit here, Randall. He's good. He did good work with Kirk Cousins. He's been around the league in a couple different spots. Did good work, I thought, last year with Derek Carr. So both of these hirings really good. Probably what we expected to have him brought in, what we wanted as far as having guys that aren't learning as a pro for the first time, being head coaches. I've been a college coach. Now I'm going to be a pro quarterbacks coach. Now I'm going to be a pro offensive line coach for the first time, Randall. No, we went out there and find actually tried and true guys that we know what we're going to get in them. So as good as anything that we could find out there on the open market would be kind of the short answer, with that one. But the free agent list, unfortunately, Randall, is very thin and very light right now. The Real Cheese, thank you for the $5 donation. It says, if we get in the Garrett sweepstakes and lose, would you maybe take a look at Denzel Ward? Apparently he would consider his spot if Garrett goes. He would reconsider his spot if Garrett goes. Let me first take a look at the So I'll answer your question actually showing you kind of the over the cap. Probably going to be able to clearer or more clearer show this over here to you. Or not. This thing likes to trip out on me sometimes. Okay. So let's first back this up. All right. The first thing that we're here with, that the problem that they have from a Cleveland perspective is that you're $30 million over the cap space. So the thing that goes on here with this real cheese is that already you're going to have to find a way with Myles Garrett. I'm highlighting this money right here on the side. And that money that I'm highlighting on the side there, that $16 million, is the increased dead money that the Browns have to free up through their books in order to accommodate a Myles Garrett trade. So they already got to free up money in the books just to get their normal order of business done. Then they're going to need to free up money on the books in order to get a Myles Garrett deal done. They're then not going to be able to have the flexibility to then move Denzel Ward, who is right above him on the cost here. So $16 million here for Garrett, but then above Garrett is another $18 million that you'd have to come up with. So to get so let's go back to this then. Keep those two numbers in your mind. $33 million approximately. So what you're looking at then is you're looking at a Cleveland Browns team now that has to not only clear that $30 million that they currently are over the cap, they would need to clear an additional $33 million. They need to clear $63 million of cap space simply to do their normal order of business and to be able to move Myles Garrett and to move Denzel Ward. I don't know how it's going to even be hard to get this done as far as the Myles Garrett contract is concerned, because they've already pulled all of the levers that they have to pull. So the key on this is always to look at the far right-hand column. And what you want to see in the far right-hand column as far as your top contracts are concerned is ideally you're not in the red. Red is negative. You want to be in the it gets plus back. So you can see if I cut Deshaun Watson, it's $172 million dead money, or $172 million dead, and it's, just as far as full money off. And then you take the $46 million off the base salary, and we're still at $99 million of dead money. So looking down the line of this, is you look at these guys individually to a man, boom, 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 boom. It's negative money already, meaning that you can't cut those guys and create the space to make these other deals happen. So it's kind of a long answer to that one there, real cheese, but it's basically the answer is no. Denzel's stuck. Garrett might be stuck as well when it all is said and done, because Cleveland's going to have to essentially take this thing down below the studs in order to accommodate both of those two deals. I mean, they would have to just absolutely pick and pull apart this team down to nothing to make that happen. And I don't think that Cleveland has shown any willingness to even get close to that in recent history. I don't know if much less to really go overdrive like that, they'd be willing to do it. Is it possible? But it'd be very minute, I'd say, real cheese as a possibility. Garrett, possible. Denzel's going to be, I don't know how they do it. Mr. Kane says, I like a little more cushion myself, B. Hey, I don't mind it either. It certainly doesn't put a frown on my face. War Chief says, yo, if we got DK Metcalf contract extension completed also sooner than later, that'll make my offseason very happy. There you go. I'd be happy with that too, especially that price. JL says it would be funny if every starter on the Browns put out a letter. That would be pretty funny. Addicted to Hawks, Brandon. Yeah, if you don't filter, I did filter on that one. Addicted. I filtered last 24 hours and it came up with the old contract on it. It usually does come up good on that on Google too, but I did filter it on that one. I was like, Ornacity says Civ Revolution 5 and 6. I've enjoyed. I really got into it on 6 myself. Ornacity. I was a little slow to get around to this. I did a little bit of 5, but really got into 6. And I just really love 6. I mean, I like shooters and I like twitchy stuff, but it's such a great counter to some of the twitchier video games where you got to be like drinking a pot of coffee before you play the game. It's nice to just be able to play a game where you're just kind of like click, 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 nice and gentle and easy. It's just a fun game too. I like it. Cool strategy game. Dictus says, Brandon, the ball tapping okay. If she does it with a smile and joke. JL, I'm excited to see Tyrese Knight take the next step. He was good for rookie. Best will linebacker we've had in Seattle, JO, since Leroy Hill in 2005. Long live the king. Evil, unfunny plot twist. The Niners signed Burrow. Seahawks signed Purdy. Geno signs with the Rams. And McVay, they all dunk on us with Saquon style twice a year. That would be a wild alt poltergeist Twilight Zone kind of universe if that went down like that. I have kind of been thinking, King, about the fact of like maybe the Niners take a silent run at a guy like Aaron Rodgers or something, or Kirk Cousins. We know Cousins loves himself Shanahan, and Shanahan loves himself some Cousins. But I would be sick if the Niners got Burrow. I would more than throw up in my mouth. I'd throw up on stream. Mr. Kane says, heading off. Hit that like button, y'all. Good night. Have a good night, Mr. Kane. I appreciate you, man. Hope you have a good one, bro. And long live. Thank you for the $5, man. Orgy Brandon, I tried to join you on Twitch the last time, but I couldn't find you. It's because I'm old. What is the name of your channel so I can find it easier? I want to watch Civilization. War Chief, it's the Seahawks, rather than just the Hawks Nest here on YouTube, it's the Seahawks Nest. But War Chief, you can also, if you click in the description link section of this video, all of my description links have the link in there. So it's just click that link to it's twitch.com/ the Seahawks Nest, I think is what the extension would be. That link will take you directly there too, as well, to that. So, just right there in the description will take you over there as well. Addicted Hawks, Brandon, have you had a look at Damian Martinez, running back from Miami? His 40-yard dash is 0.04 slower than Derrick Henry's combine, but rest of him is super wow to me. I was actually watching just a hair of him last night, but I got into that spot because I've been trying to grind through about 4 or 5 a day if I can, addicted. And by the time I always get to the 5th prospect, I definitely get to that spot where I'm like, the eyes start to glaze over, and you've just seen, it's definitely at that spot a little bit where it's starting to fit. And then that's where I have to shut it off and be like, okay, it's bedtime. So he's the next guy I'm picking up at the running back position to take a look at. But he looked interesting. He runs hard. He runs strong. He runs physical. Addicted on that side. Probably going to be a guy I'll probably have around in the 4th or 5th roundish area of things when it's all said and done. I don't think he's in the top upper crust. But good value could be had with him in the 4th or 5th, I think. But I still have to do the deep dive with him, I still got to look into him a bit. Random McDaniel, thank you for the $2 donation. Byron Murphy in a first for Garrett. Who says no? Yeah, I'd probably pull off that deal, Randall. I'd probably pull off that deal. The only hard part that comes into play on that a bit, Randall, is that you just got this as a first-round pick to Byron Murphy last year. So you are going to have to eat about $9 million of dead money in order to facilitate a Byron Murphy move. So it's like, well, you lose the first, you lose last year's first in the equivalent of Murphy, and then you're losing a $9 million in cap space in addition to that. So that might make it a little bit harder, but I probably still would end up Randall. I'd probably still be nodding my head, but like, yeah, no, I'm good with it. Let's go. Probably still would say yes. Dictus says, maybe Google searches, maybe your situation exists for other YouTube watchers. Maybe Google search, maybe your situation. Good. Lars put Sam Howell left guard. Noah, if we were to draft a left guard first round, who do you like better, Booker or Banks? Booker might end up the best guard of the two, though I think it's close, Noah, but I'd go with Banks because I do think he gives you the right tackle insurance of Abraham Lucas. In addition to being a guy who should likely slide into guard and have no problems in there. So you get a little bit of extra with Banks on that versatility where Booker's a pure left guard. That's where he will be. That's where he will stay. But they're very close for me, Noah. Francis, any more Google is here. The AI answers, some ads, and maybe what you search for page 3. Yeah, it's gotten worse. That's for sure. It's definitely, it gets maddening at times when you're trying to search for stuff where it's like, dude, stop. Google should not be this hard in this modern era that like, I got to do like advanced search parameters in all these different places rather than I entered the right keynotes in. If this thing's really searching through all the data, you should be spitting back what I'm looking for rather than having to hunt and peck for it like you do. John says, do you play COD on console or computer? I play on console, John. I'm a console COD guy. Angry AB, if we traded Geno DK, what do we save? Hypothetically, of course. If you traded Geno and DK, you would cumulatively save $41.875 million. Let's just round it up. We'll call it $42 million collectively saved if you traded both Geno and DK. Femi says he looks like he likes his cousins, is Kyle Shanahan. Cousins might go to Shanahan. And especially if the cost of Brock goes up too exorbitant, the Niners just don't want to pay it. They go, look, the thing with Cousins is that he's got the Russell Wilson situation going on. Russell had with Denver last year. You may not be high on Cousins, but he does carry potentially that sort of vet minimum cost because it's all offset by the fact that the Falcons are basically paying a salary in 2025. So it could open up some doors for Cousins in ways people might have quite considered. Long live the king. Thank you for the $2 donation. What's Purdy's realistic team market? Well, he still is under club control right now, King. And I don't know that there's a lot of trade value for a Purdy because of the fact that whoever trades for him has to pay him a new deal. And that's the whole reason the Niners would be moving him in the first place, is that he's insisting after 3 years he gets paid. And it's going to be very hard for the Niners or any team not to say that he doesn't deserve to be paid. If Tua can get the deal he got after 3 years, then why shouldn't Purdy get the deal? And Lawrence gets the deal he got after 3 years, and any number of these quarterbacks. It's Purdy's got to be paid this offseason. You can't wait on this one. The Niners would like to. They're not going to be able to. They're going to pay him. What he's making, is it going to be 45? Is it going to be 50? Is it going to be over 50? We'll see on that. I don't think it's going to be heavily discounted. But I don't think that there's a marketable team out there that's going to be trading for Brock Purdy to go give him $50 million. We're going to give you a second-round pick for $50 million. We're going to give you a third-round pick for Brock Purdy to pay $50 million to him. I can't see there being the team that would do that. He is most valuable to the Niners. And I don't think they want to pay him, but it's just one of those impossible places where you go, how do you not? He's done 3 years. He's outperformed his rookie deal. He's a 7th-round pick who's never been paid. You got to give him his money. Addicted Brandon. Yep. I've been watching lots of videos. Martinez looks really interesting. Catches the ball too. Pass protect. I'm interested to check him out. He looks fun. Good size to him. Last night, when I was watching at the end, I always do this move at the end when I'm getting deep in the prospect. Same thing where I usually got Pumpkin in the arm. She's warming me up on the chest, and I'm into my like 4th running back. I think I had gotten through. Last night I was going through Devin Neal, Jarquez Hunter, Khalil Mullins from Michigan. And then I got onto that one. The final one was the Miami kid. It was just like one of these moves I was catching myself. Like, oh no. BME says, what's your opinion on international franchises for an NFL team? I think it's just going to be too hard to pull off. I think we've got to get to the point where air travel is much faster than it is. We can't be asking teams we saw the effect of what happened to our team when we went to Germany. I mean, we were cooking along, riding along, singing a song, got to Germany a couple of years ago, and that team was never the same moving through the rest of the season. It's really hard to say, okay, in your mid-year, your body's aching, we're going to take this flight halfway across the world. And I just think it's too hard to do. We got to get some of those like Concorde back, those Blackbird planes, that can cross the Atlantic in like a half hour. If we can't get that, I just don't see how you can make the international thing work. Where she says, just our luck. We trade Byron Murphy for Garrett, and in 3 years, Byron Murphy surpasses Garrett. Laughing out loud. That'd be kind of our luck, that's for sure. That would be our luck. I'm with you, Randall. If you can get an opportunity to get a Hall of Famer in his prime and it doesn't kill your assets to go get him, you do so. Agreed. Beamy, does Hawaii have enough people to fit a packed stadium? Yeah, because probably. I mean, shoot, if you can get a team in Buffalo to work, you can get a team in Hawaii to work. Because all those flights in Hawaii are like half hour away. So you could have people going and checking out games in Oahu, coming over from Kauai, coming over from Maui, coming over from the Big Island, or have it on the Big Island, and they're all coming over from that. You'd have plenty of people that would make it an event to go see it in that way. The Islanders are always looking for more stuff to do. And they love football over there. Or she says, feed me out international team, but can Hawaii have a team? Yeah, I'd be with it. I'd be more in favor of some of these teams domestically getting teams that I think could be small markets that would definitely thrive. A lot like Buffalo kind of can a little bit, but I mean, even West Coast, from Hawaii's to Portland's to Boise's, I think there's a variety of different places where you would really find a voracious fan base that would love having local teams there. Larson says trade Reek. They just might. Litbag, have you looked at Raheem Sanders, running back out of Arkansas? I have actually. And he's an interesting guy where kind of been looking at him for a long period of time. So, he's been watching him for a little bit of like years here with some of these backs, Lit Baby. I've only been watching him, this year just now, and so got a little bit of a ability to really get a close look at him. So he had a couple of really good years, 22, 23. He's a guy with some really good burst for his size, listed 6'2", 237. He's probably 6'2", 230. But he's got some good burst for his size. He's not a real change of direction guy. He's got these really long legs, so it's a little bit like Darren McFadden. I know that they both played for Arkansas at one time, and kind of that sort of same kind of build to him a little bit. In fact, I'm sure that that's probably some of what drew them to him in recruiting him to Arkansas, is that there was some probably like, man, he looks like Darren. He kind of looks like Darren, doesn't he? Sort of. So he has these really good years in 22, 23, and he looks like a guy that's going to be second, third round kind of pick. But then he came out this last year and really had a tough year. Maybe there's some things with him, an injury this last year. Arkansas's offensive line not at the same place, maybe. He is lacking a little bit of speed for the position, but he's got the size, he's got the weight, he's got the burst you look for. He's got good college productivity. I think you're going to have this guy having some holes open for him at the next level. He's not a guy you're going to want to say, hey, you need to create on your own. I need to get this guy some holes to work through, but he's a guy that maybe can maximize those holes if you do give him that. He's a fun back, but I do drop him down a little bit because that last year production is not the greatest. So rather than being a second, third round grade, I've got more into the fourth, fifth round kind of area on him right now. Cool Breeze says, stop doing regular season games overseas. Keep that preseason exhibition. Agreed. I think it's horrible for the players. You're already asking them to play 17 games. You're already asking them to do 2 Thursday night games. Let's not make this harder on them than it already is. Let's not reduce down the product on the field than it already has been reduced. Addicted Brandon, you watch YouTube Prospects with Pumpkin on your shoulder. Mine is a bottle of Jim Beam, teasing. Also, does Cam Scatabo raise any interest for a ground and pound with Sharbs? Not really addicted. I think Cam's a little bit more higher in steam than certain people out there in their outlook of him. I don't mind him, but I do have more of a fourth round grade on him. of where I've got him, pegged in at. You can't even get McIntosh the ball right now. I don't know how you're going to get Scatabo the ball with even deepening those ranks. He's fun, but we've got bigger needs, and you can still go get very good backs later on in this draft, Addicted. I don't think Scatabo's talent is so overwhelming that I need to jump in that at the third round versus waiting for a guy in the fifth or sixth that's going to be very close to his talent level. Different type of player, but overall upside will be about the same when it's all said and done on that, I think, when it all does shake out. So, yeah, he runs hard as hell. Nobody runs harder in this draft than Scatabo. We've doubled down on the running back. We have 2 second-round picks here, Addicted. McIntosh showed that he can get it done last year. There's only going to be so many carries on this team for running backs, and going 4 deep and putting high draft capital in the 4th guy on the pecking order is probably not a smart allocation of assets for the team. Brian likes Rocket Sanders. He's fun. That's a hell of a nickname, too. Rocket Sanders for a running back. Nick says, great point, Brandon. Kenny McIntosh is a better choice, Creed. Yeah, McIntosh showed last year. I mean, he's got some talent. We thought we were getting a steal in him in the 7th round, and he's been stuck behind the depth chart. Finally got out there this last year for some carries, and he maximized it to the utmost. And so he's only emboldened me to be able to believe that we've got a guy that absolutely can be the 3rd guy. And you're very rarely going to get to the 4th guy in your depth chart. Along the key, I believe Portland would embrace an NFL franchise. I agree. I do. I believe the exact same thing. I think that they would completely sell out that stadium. I think they would have. I think the same thing about Boise. Boise would be in the same point, I think, on it. And there's a lot of West Coast teams that would absolutely, especially in some of these cities like a Boise or like a Portland that's only got basketball, that doesn't have a lot of other sports that they're going to be able to surround themselves with throughout the year. And so you're going to get all eyeballs on you maximized at that point. Colby says move the Cards to Anchorage, keep them in the division. It would be fun to go up to Anchorage and, they'd have some cool ass, the Ice Bowl or something, the Ice Stadium, or they'd have some, the Ice Box. That's what they call it. Ice Box Field, Have an outdoor stadium in Alaska. Just to give themselves an advantage, they're used to playing in the conditions. We've got a grizzly bear that's entered the field of play. Did anybody bring a shotgun today? The running back's just been taken down the open field by the grizzly. Tell the kids to look away if they're watching TV now. Can we go to commercial? Can we go to commercial? Oh my God, he's taking his arm off. Go to commercial. I think the Hawks, Brandon, is it fair to say Walker will be traded? I think McDonald will like Sharbs and McIntosh better. Watch Martinez round 4 and 5, then smile. I will indeed. I only think Walker goes if you're going to get a package situation to go. So if you're going to try to go get a Burrow and you put some package together of draft picks and this guy and that guy, I could see Walker going that way. If you go for a Myles Garrett and it's a first round pick, couple first round picks, and you're taking a Reek and you're taking a Walker and 2 first round picks, I could see it going that way. Other than that, he just doesn't have any draft. He doesn't have any real returns that he's going to supply to you alone. He's coming off a bad season. He's got 1 more year left of club control before a team has to decide to sign him. There's no trade value out there that you're going to get for a guy that has been injury prone through the early part of his career. He's coming off a 3.7 yard per carry average behind an offensive line where Charbonnet, the same offensive line, came out 4.5, 4.6 yard per carry average. So it's just the worst time right now to try to move a Walker. And I just don't think that there's a lot of reason to do so then because of that. If you can't get any value back, then why move him just for the sake of moving him? Cool Breeze says, Portland deserves either MLB or NFL. I agree, Cool Breeze. I mean, just look at how many East Coast teams there are. I mean, Jacksonville, Buffalo. Come on, right? Come on. I dig Docs Brandon, the Icebox. Have you not heard of Soldier Field? Laughing out loud. Well, they're already called Soldier Field, though. You hear Soldier Field and you just already know. You already know. Randy cut it probably would be a moose, not a bear, running the field laughing out loud. That's right, true. Moose are also very, very mean. Very mean. All right, well, we're going to wrap it up on this note, folks. We got almost 4 hours in today, so a couple programming notes for you guys. I am going to be going over within about an hour We got the game releasing at 9 o'clock Pacific West time over on Twitch. So if you guys like to keep the conversation going on into the night, I'll be up late tonight. I'm probably over on Twitch a couple times throughout the course of this off season, quite frankly. So if you want to join me over there, I'll be back over there in about just an hour, get some food and whatnot. And I got to wait for the game to release at 9 o'clock on the dot. But I will be going live over there on that side of it tonight. We'll be coming back on Friday with you guys. I'm going to do a show that's going to be based a little bit around some lessons that we can take away from the Eagles. What are the Eagles doing that we're not? What is Howie Roseman doing to be so ahead of the ball, to take three real separate NFL teams, three separate teams, three different personnel groupings of teams in 8 years, and get them to a Super Bowl? What is he doing right that John's doing wrong? What can John do to take away some things of what Roseman's doing in his approach that could maybe be beneficial to John? And so we'll be going into that on Friday. That'll be a 12 o'clock show Friday. So please do tune in for that. I will get that posted up as far as, I haven't gotten the show created yet, but I'll probably get it done just after this show wraps up today. I want to thank Long Live the King for the multiple donations. Randall McDaniel, Real Cheese, Mark Sanchez, Noah Lansing, multiple donos, Phoebe, multiple donos, Robbie Red, O'Dwyer, John Naylor. Woo! You guys are cooking it up as always on this Dogzilla. Real Cheese again, man. Thank you guys for all of the donations and the support here on the channel. I really, really do appreciate it, as you guys are very, very, very kind on that as ever, to that degree of things. So we'll be back here in 48 hours on Friday, 12 o'clock. You can join me over on Twitch here tonight at 9 o'clock as well. We got the Hawks Nest Clips channel rolling over there on the other side of it if you haven't subbed up to that as well. So lots of content we're going to keep cooking through. I'll get a member show out to you guys here shortly as well on that. So it is the off season, but we keep on rolling here at the Hawks Nest. We're not stopping. We're only going to keep this rolling, going even faster. We got rumors of a DK Metcalf contract extension. If that comes down the line, you know I'll go live, and you know we will talk about it, because that will certainly indicate that this team is going to try to be a contender right now. We'll see if they will. The important decision, the fork at the road, is coming up, and it is coming up fast. We will learn quickly which direction the team's going to go, how John's going to operate, and if we can have confidence that this is going to be a successful offseason, if this is going to be a championship offseason to get us truly to a contending state. My name is Brandon Kane. This is the Hawks Nest. Please do, if you could for me, just from the bottom of my heart, I ask you, hit that like button. If you can get subbed up as well, I'd really appreciate that. In addition to that, I thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you hitting that like button. Appreciate you subbing on up. We will be back very soon. But until that time, please, by God, don't you ever forget. Don't you do it. Don't you dare do it. Championship offseason, baby. We're just beginning now. We're just about to ride. Get in this seat. Get in shotgun. I'm driving. Let's go. And don't you ever forget. Go Hawks.